Chapter 1236. Old Master Gu. Hellion Vivian curled her lips. Do you really think I can't hear anything? Just now, every word your granddaughter said was deliberately misleading others, making everyone think that the problem in this matter was all because of a Jew. I have to say that this move is indeed beautiful. I didn't, Mrs. Hellion, I really didn't. Gu Ro's beautiful eyes were red as if she was trying her best to suppress her grievance. She said to Hellion Vivian in a low voice, I couldn't think of so many things, so how could I mislead others? If Madam really thinks that I made a Jew suffer, I can apologize. I can do anything you want. After all, I really didn't know that a Jew was your daughter. Those who didn't know the reason saw this scene and thought that Hellion Vivian was using her power to make things difficult for a junior. The one who was making things difficult was a 17-year-old girl. Hellion Vivian looked at Gu Ro's haggard little face and suddenly smiled. If that's the case, then apologize first. Hearing Hellion Vivian's words, Gu Ro's body trembled, and a trace of uneasiness flashed across her beautiful face. In fact, how could she be willing to apologize? So many people were watching. For her to personally apologize to another person, this was simply a kind of torture for her. However, she had already come to this point. If she didn't say anything, she would only be more embarrassed. Thinking of this, Gu Ro gently bit her red lips and looked at little Aju with red eyes. Aju, Sister Ro doesn't know why things have gotten to this point. It was clearly just a birthday gift, but it caused everyone to misunderstand. If Sister Ro's unintentional actions made you feel uncomfortable, Sister Ro apologizes to you. After Gu Ro finished speaking, she turned her head and cried. She looked as if she had been beaten into confessing. Old Master Gu also felt uncomfortable. He turned his head and said to Hellion Vivian angrily, Madam should be satisfied now, right? Not satisfied. These three words were not said by Hellion Vivian. It was Baligaju who was standing at the side and had not spoken. Aju looked back with her round almond-shaped eyes. Bailey Jiaju glanced sideways and glanced at her. Then he reached out and placed his hand on her little head, rubbing it back and forth. The black gloves perfectly wrapped around his slender hands, making him look like a character who had walked out of a comic book. His handsome and dignified face was still as calm as ever. But he did not know why. The moment he opened his mouth, that evil and cold aura suddenly became very strong. Aju raised her hand and touched the top of her head that her father had touched. Her small face was even more stunned. Did Imperial Father stroke her head? His head was touched by his father. This was the only thought left in Aju's mind. He didn't even care about the people around him. Bailey Shangxie and Hellion Qingchen watched from the side and couldn't help but raise their eyebrows. Back in the day, Imperial Father had never touched their heads or killed them. It was already good enough that he didn't throw them here and there. When it came to Qingchen, the man still had some patience. When it came to Bailey Shangxie, he really displayed the characteristics of a demon to the fullest. Bailey Shangxie basically didn't want to recall the past. Thousands of years ago, in order to find his mother, his father was so angry that he almost destroyed his son. Now the Gu family was actually throwing a tantrum at his mother. They were really too blind. Old Master Gu still didn't realize what he was going to face next. He only felt that the Bailey family was deliberately looking for trouble. His old face became more and more unsightly, and the anger in his voice also became stronger. Xiuju, are you insisting on making things difficult for my Gu family? Baligaju looked at him, and the corners of his mouth slowly curled up into a cold smile. The apology is not sincere. How is it making things difficult for your Gu family? I've already said that. Is it not sincere? Gu Ro's face turned pale. She looked at the crowd and tears welled up in her beautiful eyes. She looked very pitiful. She lowered her head and muttered, It's just a misunderstanding. How else do you want me to apologize? Even the Ju Wei group can't bully people like this. Baligaju didn't say anything. He just curled his lips. That smile was extremely cold. It was so cold that Gu Qing, who had been watching from the side, subconsciously shivered. He kept feeling that something was wrong. But he couldn't tell what was wrong. At this time, Bailey Shangxie laughed viciously. Bully people. As he spoke, he took a step in the direction of Gu Ro. He sneered and said word by word, If you say so, then I'll also tell you that we are bullying you. Gu Ro took a deep breath. Then her eyes turned red. Even her shoulders trembled. She looked extremely weak and pitiful. Old Master Gu patted his granddaughter's back. Then his face became much more serious. Our Gu family has always been gentle. We never want to be enemies with anyone. The Ju group is a big business. Our Gu family really can't afford to offend them. But Xiao Ju, if you keep making things difficult for people like this, our Gu family won't take a step back. As soon as Old Master Gu finished speaking, there was an uproar in the hall. After all, those who came to the Bai family's birthday party were all famous people. These people were different from ordinary businessmen. Most of them had a red background. Some old commanders were born with such justice. Hearing this, the gazes that were cast at the Bailey family gradually became disapproving. Isn't this too overbearing? Can't even apologize? Besides, that girl Gu didn't do anything wrong. Sounds of discussion could be heard one after another. Gu Rou lowered her eyes pitifully. Old Master Gu's face was full of righteousness, as if their Gu family was the most powerful family in the world. At this moment, Helian Weiwei opened her mouth with an indifferent expression. It seems that if we don't show some concrete evidence, some people won't admit that they're wrong. Sure enough, when discussing matters with the Gu family, we should first discuss the family's upbringing, then discuss who's the one who bullied others. As she spoke, Helian Vivian raised her finger. With a snap of her fingers, there was a loud bang. The huge television screen in the hall suddenly lit up. L, who was holding a long gun in one hand, and Monkey, who was holding a notebook in his left hand, stood at the connection point of the line source and made an okay gesture to Helian Vivian. "Boss, we can begin." "Begin what?" Just when everyone was puzzled, a voice suddenly rang out. After a buffer, Gu Rou's figure actually appeared on the screen. In an instant, everyone present looked in the direction of the screen. Chapter 1237. The location on the screen was very familiar to everyone. It was a particularly remote corner of the Bai family's courtyard today. However, the scene on the screen was not from nighttime, but from the afternoon before the banquet started. There were two men beside Gu Rou. They were both wearing the uniform of receptionists, but they did not look like members of the Bai family. Instead, they looked like members of the Gu family. Although the video was not very clear and there was a rustling sound in the voice, one could still vaguely hear Gu Rou saying something to the two men. When this scene appeared, the tears in Gu Rou's eyes froze. She even forgot that she was still pretending to be pitiful. She was so anxious that she wanted to rush towards the power cord. Helian Vivian turned to the side to block her. Her eyes were slightly cold. "It hasn't started yet. Why are you in such a hurry, Miss Gu?" "Grandpa." Gu Rou knew that she couldn't go over, so she could only turn around and grab Old Master Gu's sleeve tightly, wanting him to help. Old Master Gu looked at Beligaju and knocked his dragon-headed walking stick heavily. His eyes were full of anger. "What are you trying to do? Why is my granddaughter up there? Haven't the Gu family always been kind and honest?" The smile at the corner of Beligaju's mouth was cold, and the hostility between his eyes was even more obvious. As his words fell, there seemed to be an invisible fog behind him that was surging back and forth, making it impossible for people to get close to him. The thugs of the Gu family who followed Old Master Gu still wanted to move, but just as they took a step forward, they were blocked by a black shadow that suddenly appeared in front of them. Old Master Gu could only widen his eyes angrily and say anxiously, "Beligaju, to lower your voice." Bailey Jiaju put his slender fingers between his lips. His movements were elegant and devilish. Even the corners of his mouth looked like he was smiling yet not smiling. "My subordinates have bad tempers. Old Master Gu is always moving around like this. I'm not sure if they will hurt you." That's right, it was not them but them. Every man in black was transformed from the monsters that followed behind Bailey Jiaju. The Gu family's hired thugs did not know if they were hallucinating, but they felt that when those people blocked them, their eyes seemed to be suffused with a blood-red color that made them tremble all over. Bailey Shangxia looked at this scene and laughed evilly. Helian Qingchen's expression was indifferent. She only stroked Aju's head with her fingers and stood with her sister like that. Her eyes were cold as she looked at the Gu family. Without these distractions, Helian Vivian glanced at Monkey and the rest, indicating for them to continue. The screen pressed the play button again and Gu Rou's voice slowly entered everyone's ears. "When you see her, think of a way to drive her away, understand?" At this point, Gu Rou paused and took out a stack of money from her wallet. She placed it in the hands of the two men. You have to be straightforward when you do this. Don't let anyone know. The two men didn't accept it at first. They seemed to be a little worried. Miss, this is the Bai family's banquet, not the Gu family's. If we don't let her go home, will there be trouble? What trouble can there be? Gu Rose slapped the money into their hands and smiled gently as if she was very confident. Don't worry. You have to have a birthday invitation to enter and leave this house. She doesn't have an invitation with her and she doesn't want to come back with us. It's normal that she can't enter the Bai family. When the time comes, no one will suspect you. They will only think that she didn't arrive. After the two men heard this, they asked, won't young Master Bai be anxious if Miss Bai doesn't appear? An old Master Bai? Today is Bai Juan's birthday. No one will care where an adopted daughter goes. Moreover, she was originally a guest in someone else's house. You don't have to worry about this. I'll do a good job. Gu Rou obviously didn't think this was a problem. One of the men said again, there are so many guests coming and going. What if she clamors to come in? You guys deal with this as you see fit. If she's too troublesome, find a place to lock her up first. Gu Rou's voice sank. As long as she doesn't enter the Bai family today, you will be rewarded. When the two men heard this, they made up their minds and nodded. Yes. As soon as the three of them finished speaking, two girls entered the camera. One of them smiled and held Gu Rou's arm. They looked very intimate, as if they didn't think that they had done something wrong. Instead, they were a little proud. Gu Rou, your idea is still the best. To be honest, young Master Bai's sister is really too much of a hindrance. The last time we had a meal, it was the same. We were all 17 or 18 years old. We had to have some space for free love. As a junior high school student, she always followed behind young Master Bai. She didn't have any judgment at all, causing us to not even feel comfortable eating. She was either worried about this or that. Also, the last time we were in number 1 high school's cafeteria, the 3 men and 3 women could have directly made friends with each other. It was obvious that there was one more person. She didn't know her own limits at all. She even needed us to remind her to avoid it. As expected, she came from a small place. She didn't know the rules. Even after entering the Bai family, she couldn't change that uncomfortable poor aura. She didn't like to eat meat and always liked to eat vegetables. How could others accommodate her every time? Great, now that she wasn't at the birthday party, we could play to our heart's content. That's right, that's right. The other girl's face revealed a look of anticipation. Even her eyes were sparkling. I heard that old Master Gu's banquet plan for the Bai family included a condition for us to play alone. We could roast meat and have fun all night. Unfortunately, the Bai family cancelled this project because they had to take care of that child. Now that the child can't even enter the house, they don't have to think about her anymore. A private celebration, just thinking about it makes me excited. Gu Rou, you can still be with Senior Colonel Bai. The two of you. What are you thinking about? Gu Rou's face revealed a trace of shyness and pink. Then she chuckled and said coldly, you saw it too. I wanted to get along well with her time and time again, but this child is so insensible. She always likes to embarrass me in front of others. Since I asked her when I met her and she didn't want to come back, then I'll let her stay outside obediently. That way she won't forget her background. Gu Rou is right. The Bai family is too good to this child, especially Senior Colonel Bai. Why is he so good to a foster sister? Chapter 1238. Gu Rou listened to the words beside her ear and sneered. Then she continued, Bai Juan is good. After today he will stop treating her. She didn't even attend her brother's birthday party on time, and she even made so many people waste time waiting for her. How long do you think the Bai family will tolerate such an insensible child? So you're thinking? The girls understood and laughed. This is good too. In the future, Bai Juan won't take her seriously. When we go out again, no one will bother us. Then the screen shook and the camera panned to a school cafeteria. In the bustling crowd, a Jew was sitting upright beside a long table. She was holding a lunchbox in her hand and a little white cat on her head. The cat's tail was wagging here and there. On the screen, a Jew opened the lunchbox and looked like she was preparing to eat. At this moment, 2 of the 3 girls looked at each other from her side. Then they opened their mouths. Due to the noise and the fact that no one was taking the video on purpose, there was a lot of noise. Therefore, the quality of the picture was not very good. But even so, from the concentrated voices, one could still hear what they were saying to a Jew. The meaning was nothing more than saying that this cat took up too much time and asked Ju to go to another table. Although Gu and the others were not very straightforward, the contempt and exclusion in their eyes were very obvious. Ju glanced at them and clenched her small fists. She looked like she wanted to beat them up. However, the child did not say anything in the end. She just buried her small head and hugged the lunchbox in her hand. She sat at the dining table next to them and began to feed the little white cat. For some reason, her small back view looked lonely. The three girls then started to chat and laugh. One of them even glanced at Ju. Then she lowered her voice and whispered in Gu ear, "Baizhuan's sister is really an eyesore." Fortunately, at this moment Helian Qingchen, who was wearing a school uniform, appeared in the scene. He walked to Ju's side. Then Li Hailu and the others rushed towards him. Then the girls mocked him, saying that a person like him was not worthy of eating on the second floor of the cafeteria. They told him to go back to where he came from and so on. Those words that entered his ears were too unpleasant. Some people in the hall could not help but raise their hands to cover their mouths. Their eyes were filled with shock. The commanders stared at the scene in front of them for a long time. All of them widened their eyes in shock. They had never thought that a 17-year-old girl would be so scheming. They had never thought that these well-mannered girls in front of them would be like this behind their backs. Not only did they mock and ridicule them, they even looked down on them. How did the Gu family raise such a granddaughter? In an instant, everyone in the hall turned to look at the Gu family. It's too ruthless. I really didn't expect this to be a girl's idea. If it wasn't for his brother's protection, Ju would have been bullied. I've already been pushed aside, okay? Wasn't it shown in the video? Those girls' faces were too ugly. Oh my god, I was speechless. Hearing the discussions around her, Gu was stunned. After a while she said in a panic, "This isn't true. This can't be real." Gu's face was pale. She wanted to defend herself, but the video was clearly displayed there. No matter how hard she tried to deny it, she could not come up with a reasonable excuse. Even her words became pale and powerless. Gu bit her lip tightly. Why was there this video? These things shouldn't exist in this world. The video is fake. These videos must be fake. Gu denied it crazily. She only wanted to turn off the screen as soon as possible. However, everyone knew what the truth was. After watching the video, the shocked old master turned to look at Gu. His eyes were filled with disbelief. His gaze towards Gu was filled with shock, disappointment, and even anger. Helian Wei stood at the side. The corners of her mouth curled up, bringing out a faint sneer. "Miss Gu, before you say that the video is fake, can you please take a look at the date and source of the video? These videos were all taken from the school and the Bai family's surveillance cameras. How could they be fake?" Gu's pale face froze. Helian Vivian's every word was like the sharpest needle, piercing through all her disguises. Helian Vivian looked at her indifferently. Her eyes slid past her face and landed on Old Master Gu. "Old Master Gu, haven't you always said that our family is bullying others? After watching this video, I wonder if Old Master Gu will still say that our family is bullying your good granddaughter?" When Old Master Gu heard this, he was extremely embarrassed. The existence of the video was like a pair of invisible hands, slapping his face until it hurt. What his precious granddaughter had done was clearly recorded on it. He didn't even dare to believe that the person who said those sarcastic words was his granddaughter, who had always been obedient and sensible. He had just said that the Gu family had always been kind to people. But in the surveillance camera, it was simply too clear how his granddaughter had bullied a little girl. Helian Vivian didn't stop. She glanced at the people present and her tone turned cold. "No matter how my daughter was born, it's not her fault that she came to the Bai family and followed Baizhuan. Gu felt that she was an eyesore and hindered your precious granddaughter from pursuing Baizhuan, so she came up with so many sinister tricks. It's fine if it's just to ostracize her, but she actually wanted someone to capture my daughter and lock her in a room. In order to get close to Baizhuan, in order to make Baizhuan hate Ju, and in order to be in the limelight at Baizhuan's birthday party, she used such a method to deal with Ju. She clearly knew how much Ju valued Baizhuan's birthday, yet she still did it so deliberately. Old Master Gu, this is really a good granddaughter that your Gu family has raised." Helian Vivian's last sentence was like a huge blow, causing Old Master Gu to feel as if he had been ruthlessly beaten. At this point, everyone in the hall clearly understood what was going on. They looked at the Gu family. That kind of crusading gaze made old Master Gu wish he could find a hole to hide in. Chapter 1239. It's not like that. Listen to my explanation. It's not like that. Gu Ro's entire body trembled slightly as she looked at the crowd in fear. She anxiously explained, and bean-sized tears fell from her face uncontrollably. She couldn't admit it. Once she admitted what she had done, her reputation would be completely ruined. I really didn't think too much at that time. Gu Ro tugged at old Master Gu's sleeve anxiously. Grandfather, you have to believe me. I really didn't think too much. Old Master Gu raised his head and looked at the crowd. Under so many gazes he didn't know how to open his mouth. Hellion Vivian chuckled, her eyes were a little cold. Old Master Gu, it's a pity that your granddaughter didn't learn how to act. She said that she didn't think too much. She even thought of ordering someone to kidnap a girl who wasn't even 12 years old. What else did she not dare to do? If it weren't for these videos, she wouldn't have admitted to doing all this. She even tried to mislead people and make the guests feel that our family was bullying her. This kind of scheming is not like what she said. She didn't think too much. Hearing this, Gu Ro's face turned pale. No, it's not like that. I really just wanted a Jew to have some self-awareness. I never thought of bullying her at all. I wanted her to know that a child like her isn't worthy of Baijun at all. However, she's too clingy and doesn't know anything. She always follows behind Baijun. I really never thought of really harming her. Gu Ro. Hellion Vivian's voice sank. I've never liked to bully the weak, but you've gone too far in pretending. It's really difficult for people to show mercy. At this point you're still saying that you never thought of harming others. You got someone to lock a Jew up for a night. Isn't this method ruthless enough? It was more than just ruthless. It was simply inhumane. People were discussing animatedly. One had to know that any kind-hearted person would not use such a method to deal with a child. This could not be said to be an unintentional mistake. It was obvious that she wanted to directly destroy a Jew. Shaolin and Li Hailu looked at each other. Their current feelings were more complicated than anyone else's. Especially Li Hailu. He wished he could slap himself twice and then teach Gu Ro a lesson. If it wasn't for him, even if Baijun wanted to make a deal with the Gu family, Gu Ro wouldn't have been able to do these things so easily. It was all because he was blind and couldn't see through her. He had been angry that a Jew was siding with others and not them. But he never realized what had happened that day. And what the two girls said, he really couldn't believe that they were like this. Baijun was worried that one of them was his girlfriend, so when he got angry that day he left some leeway. It's my fault. Li Hailu blamed himself so much that his eyes were red. He clenched his fists tightly. If it wasn't for me, Gu Ro wouldn't have had the chance to come into contact with a Jew. Shaolin narrowed his eyes and said, Hailu, now is not the time to talk about this. Since you and I are the ones who caused this, then we have to do our part to get rid of these people. We'll deal with whoever bullies a Jew directly. After Shaolin's reminder, Li Hailu looked fiercely in the direction of Gu Ro and the two girls. His voice was cold. I won't let you have an easy time. The two girls' fingers trembled. The way they wanted to escape was blocked by the invisible man in black. They had never thought that such a video would exist. Why were all their words being recorded on the camera? What should they do? What should they do now? They were definitely dead. Offending Shaolin and Li Hailu meant that they would no longer be able to establish themselves in the circle. They could almost imagine how miserable their lives would be in the future. Even if they were from second high school, putting aside the power of the Li and Xiao families, just the influence of these two people in the hearts of the girls would make them suffer. Moreover, when they did these things and said these words, they never thought that the child would be the little princess of the Jiwei group. How were they going to live in the future? When the two girls thought of this, they did not care anymore. They tried their best to explain and exposed Gu Ro. It's not our fault. It's Gu Ro. She was the daughter of the Gu family, so we could only go along with what she said. If we didn't do what she asked us to do, someone would ostracize us the next day at school. Previously, there was a girl who went against her wishes. Now, no one in the school is sitting with her for dinner. Everyone in the class treats her like a monster. Hailu, you have to believe us. We only care so much about Gu Ro's opinion because we don't want to become like that. We will do whatever she says. Moreover, she once vaguely mentioned that it would be great if Baijun didn't have this troublesome sister by his side. She would be able to be with Baijun all the time, and it would be easier for her to pursue Baijun. What nonsense are you talking about? After hearing these words, Gu Rou couldn't help but shout. She rushed in front of the two girls and slapped the face of the girl who spoke. Her eyes were red. I've been so good to you and you dare to treat me like this. The girl burst into tears immediately. She reached out to cover her face and shouted, anyway, I've already offended everyone. I don't care if I offend you or not. If you weren't the daughter of the Gu family, how many people do you think will accompany you? Gu Rou reached out and pounced on the girl again. No one cared about them. The two of them instantly pulled each other into a ball. Their hair was tugging at each other's hair. There was no sign of their usual gentleness. Instead, it was like a dog-eat-dog situation. Even old Master Gu's eyes were filled with shock when he saw this scene, let alone the others. The people at the scene no longer spoke up for Gu Rou. Instead, the disgust in their eyes was so obvious. Gu Qing stood at the side and clenched his hands tightly. After the video was released, he knew that the Gu family was finished this time. When he found out, he thought that even if his cousin liked Bai Juan and did some tricks, she wouldn't have such a bottom line. However, after seeing those scenes, even he felt an indescribable anger in his chest. He knew very well what kind of person the little bean was. His cousin actually used such a method to deal with her. Moreover, she was just a child. Chapter 1240. The tearing sounds in the hall grew louder and louder. Seeing this scene, Aju's big round eyes turned around. Her small face was very serious as she said to Helian Qingchen, who was standing beside her, "Second brother, watching them hurt each other like this is even better than me beating them up myself." Helian Qingchen tilted her head and smiled. She lowered her voice and said, "This is all father's idea. I have to learn from him in the future." Aju nodded her head as she spoke. The kitten on her head shook its tail with her movements. Of course, old Master Gu would not allow his granddaughter to continue to embarrass herself like this. With a stiff expression, he instructed the people beside him, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and pull Miss away." The Gu family's thugs did want to pull her away, but they were still being stared at by the men in black. Just the look in their eyes was terrifying. It was as if the ones looking at them were not humans, but some other unknown creature. The Gu family's thugs were so scared that they did not dare to move. Seeing this, old Master Gu became even more anxious. He walked over with his walking stick and wanted to pull his granddaughter away personally. However, when Gu Rou raised her hand, she touched his eyes. There was a loud bang. Old Master Gu's walking stick loosened. If Gu Qing had not reacted quickly and dragged him from behind, old Master Gu's old life would have been over here. Nonsense. This is simply nonsense. Old Master Gu felt a burning pain in his eyes. He knew that everyone here was looking at them, looking at the Gu family as if they were watching a farce. It might not be so embarrassing if it was just scheming against others, but what was this now? The granddaughter that he had carefully raised and praised every time she met actually flew into a rage in public like a shrew. And the things that were mentioned in the video, every single one of them made old Master Gu want to leave immediately. Seeing old Master Gu like this, Gu Qing reached out and grabbed Gu Rou's wrist. Gu Rou was still struggling, shouting, "Gu Qing, let go of me. I'm going to teach this traitor a lesson." As she spoke, she kept kicking her feet as if she wanted to kill the other party. Gu Qing was furious and pulled her over. The young man's voice was very deep at this moment. "Enough. Wake up and see what kind of situation this is." After hearing Gu Cheng's words, Gu Rou finally realized that she was still at Bai Juan's birthday party. She panicked and looked to her side. She saw that everyone present was looking at her as if she was trash. The disgust in their eyes was so obvious. Only then did she realize what she had done in front of everyone. "I didn't do it on purpose." Gu Rou's voice became weak again. Her beautiful black hair had also become messy. Her exquisite makeup had also changed because of the scuffle just now. The lip gloss that she had applied was also all smudged. Originally, girls relied on 70% of their appearance. Now Gu Rou's temperament was completely gone. How could she still look like a rich daughter? Therefore, no matter how pitiful she pretended to be, it looked like she was putting on an act. Gu Rou herself did not realize it. She pointed her finger at the girl who had been torn apart by her. "It's all her fault. She's slandering me." "Slandering?" The girl sneered. Half of her eyelashes had fallen off. She did not look much better. She was sharp-tongued. "What you said before is all in our WeChat group. There are all the chat records there. Are you only willing to admit it after I send the chat records to everyone? Miss Gu. Gu Ro's face turned green as if she was angered by her words again. Her fingers trembled as if she was about to pounce on her again. Gu Qing waved his long arm and stopped her. Gu Ro cried. At this point, it seemed that all she had left was crying. Helian Wei Wei's gaze was indifferent as she watched this scene unfold. The corners of her mouth slowly curled up. Old Master Gu, look, no matter how much you deny it, your granddaughter has already started to fight amongst herself. Old Master Gu's left eye had already turned green because of Gu Ro's bump. He seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. The white hair on his forehead was messy and even his back was bent. Where was the domineering aura he had just now? He first glanced at Helian Vivian and opened his mouth, but he could not bring himself to do so. But this matter had to be settled. If this continued, the Gu family would only be even more embarrassed. Thus he turned his head and looked at his good friend of many years, Old Master Bai. Old Bai, look at my rower now. She also knows that she was wrong. She's not a child with a bad heart. I didn't notice. She said before that the Jun boy was too difficult to get close to. He had never liked a boy so much. As her grandfather, I was worried for her. For the Jun boy, she had done too many things that she wouldn't have done. Including everything she is doing now. It's all because she wants to pursue the Jun boy. The more Old Master Gu spoke, the lower his voice became. Can you say something for Ro on account of our many years of relationship? You're Bai family raised a Jew. The people of Ju Wei Corporation will definitely listen to what you say. A Jew can make us apologize however she wants. But can Ro leave some face for her? After all, she's still a child. She did something wrong in a moment of impulse. Fortunately, a Jew didn't suffer any harm. Why don't we? Bang. Old Master Gu had not finished his words. He heard a sharp gust of wind suddenly sweep past his ears. It was fierce. What flew past his ear was not something else but a transparent goblet. The goblet flew to the wall behind Old Master Gu. Then it fell to the ground and turned into pieces of debris. The water gradually splashed onto Old Master Gu's face. This made him unable to recover for a long time. It was obvious that he was frightened by this sudden sound. When he turned around with pale lips, he saw Bai Jun standing tall and straight. Because the goblet in his hand was gone, he was particularly eye-catching. The pure white suit gave people a sharp and vicious aura. His handsome face was even colder at that moment. Chapter 1241. Bai Ping. Gu Ro's red and haggard eyes slowly widened. She did not expect Bai Jun to actually attack her grandfather. Old Master Gu's face was also filled with shock and disbelief. However, Bai Jun only stared at him. He was like a poisonous giant snake that was spitting its tongue at him. The surrounding wind kept pouring in from the half-open window and blowing on Bai Jun's face. No one knew how much pain his heart felt when he heard those words and saw those videos. His chest felt as if it had been pierced by a blade. It was so painful that almost all his internal organs were cold. His throat felt as if there was a ball of fire burning. Bai Jun knew that this time his pain had nothing to do with the cold. His heart ached. When everything Gu Ro had done was exposed in front of him, his heart felt as if it had been placed on a fire of anger. Inch by inch he had nowhere to put it. Bai Jun had never thought that the child he had carefully protected for so many years would one day be bullied like this. Moreover, the reason why those people dealt with her and mocked her was all because of him. When these people were talking, he was clearly in the cafeteria, but he did not notice anything. What was he doing at that time? He was actually afraid that a Jew would like someone else and want to leave him after knowing his thoughts. So he tried his best to restrain his feelings and told himself to stay away from her. From there, he showed an unprecedented indifference, so much so that a Jew was actually ostracized when she was less than 2 meters away from him. The feeling in his heart was no longer as simple as just feeling uncomfortable. If this still caused a Jew to be hurt, then what was the point of him enduring everything for a long time to deal with those businessmen? Everything he did was to make a Jew not do anything. As long as she was responsible for being happy, she would continue to be happy. Now that he thought about it, a Jew must have sensed his deliberate alienation back then. That was why she did not say anything at that time. She silently took the lunchbox and moved to another table. Bai Jun no longer knew how to express his feelings, as if he had been drenched in snow. His hands could not help but clench involuntarily. Because he used too much force, his nails sank into his flesh. However, at this moment Bai Jun seemed to not feel any pain at all. He only looked at Gu Rou coldly and said word by word, "If killing is not against the law, I really want to shoot you to death." Gu Rou was shocked. Then even her lips turned pale and colorless. She had thought about the consequences if Bai Jun found out what she had done, but none of them were things that Bai Jun would disregard the friendship between the two families and completely fall out with her like this. Does he not want that contract anymore? Gu Rou's thoughts were always the same. She thought that she was the one who understood Bai Jun the best. In fact, those contracts were nothing to Bai Jun. If there was no Aju, if it wasn't for Aju, Bai Jun would not be so modest to the Gu family. "Bai Jun, what are you doing?" Old Master Gu stood in front of his granddaughter. Even a judge has to give people a chance to turn over a new leaf. "Bai Jun, you should know who wrote or became like this for." Bai Jun raised his eyes. "I've never said that I had a good impression of her. When she came to me, I had already rejected her very clearly. But your Gu family actually thinks that it's okay to bully a Jew like this? You even want to use the Bai family's kindness to pressure others? What do you mean that a Jew was not hurt anyway? I'm not even willing to let her touch a single needle. What did your Gu family do? Sow discord. Ostracize. You even want a Jew to not be able to enter the house. You want me to save face for your granddaughter, then who will save face for our Jew?" At this point, Bai Jun's eyes darkened bit by bit. "Grandpa Gu, I'm calling you Grandpa Gu now because of my grandfather. You don't have to think about using my grandfather to avoid the punishment you deserve." From the moment the matter was exposed until now, Gu Rou first pretended to be pitiful and denied what she had done. She said that it was the Ju Wei group who was bullying her because of their big business. When the video came out later, she said that she had never thought of framing a Jew. Did she really want someone to upload the chat record so that they would learn what it meant to obediently admit their mistakes? Since you don't even have the right attitude to apologize, then don't blame our Bai family for not taking into account our old friendship. I know very well what the Gu family did when they were doing business. Perhaps those things are nothing overseas, but this is China. Grandpa Gu, I'll definitely make your Gu family lose everything. Bai Jun, you can't do this. Gu Rou cried even harder. You can't do this to me. You can't do this to the Gu family. Bai Jun sneered. That youthful and handsome face was no longer as indifferent as before. Instead, for the first time, there was a terrifying anger. Why can't I do this to your Gu family? I've already warned you to stop. I didn't expect you to be even more heartless than I thought. I like you, I like you. Gu Rou looked at Bai Jun with her beautiful eyes. She cried so pitifully as if she wanted Bai Jun to feel a little compassion. How can you be so ruthless to someone who likes you? Bai Jun looked down at her and said solemnly, because you were ruthless to the person I like first. Gu Rou suddenly paused, and even her voice was completely blocked by Bai Jun's words. His words were like the second bomb of tonight's birthday banquet. They were thrown into the spacious hall, triggering countless chain reactions. Everyone was stunned as if they couldn't believe what they had heard. They all looked at each other in dismay. The person that Bai Jun said that he liked was his sister, a Jew? Even Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows in surprise. Bailey Shangxie, on the other hand, narrowed his pair of sinister and beautiful eyes. His voice was extremely cold as he said, "He better not mean what I think he meant just now. If it was, he would break his legs and throw him into the demon world to feed the demons. A Jew was their family, okay? What like? Destroy." Hellion Qingchen didn't need to think to know what her brother was thinking. She could only raise her head and look at the ceiling. She thought to herself that what he said was exactly what she thought. Bailey Shangxie immediately turned his head and exchanged a tacit look with his father. Baligaju gave him an indifferent look. Bailey Shangxie's thin lips curled up evilly. Then he moved his wrists left and right as if he was ready to beat someone up with actual combat. Chapter 1242. Hellion Vivian looked at the father and son on her side and helplessly held her forehead with her fingers. Only at this time would the two of them have a tacit understanding. Usually they did not see eye to eye with each other, but when it was not time to form a group, they started to form a group. But that child said she liked him? Hellion Vivian's eyes landed on Bai Jun. She suddenly remembered the email her daughter had sent her before. Although the words used in the email were vague, there was indeed a hint of love in the words. She even asked Buddha to explain it to her. Her Aju was still too naive. Didn't she know that Buddha had never cared about such things? Now it seemed that her Aju was not in a one-sided love. However, it was really too early to settle down before the age of 12. Although she had also settled down with His Highness when she was about the same age, Aju was different. Her daughter probably did not look at looks like she did. Her daughter used to be very ignorant. She even said that she wanted to be a temple abbot and was very serious about it. Hellion Vivian had always thought that her daughter was a career type. How could she be confessed to in public just like that? He did not think much of it. Her daughter being liked meant that her daughter was outstanding. After all, she had always been at ease with the Bai family's character. It was just that the father and son pair knew that someone liked their daughter. Their reaction would definitely not be too friendly. Hellion Vivian thought for a moment and still felt that it was appropriate to help the Bai family's boy. She could not let His Highness and the others beat him up, right? After all, His Highness's punch was not something that anyone could withstand. Could really cut a hole in the ground. Most importantly, Hellion Vivian reacted at that moment. She felt that there were not many people who had the guts like Bai Jun in the future. It was not like the father and son pair would beat up whoever chased after a Jew, right? What if they beat away all the suitors? This was really a problem. Therefore, after Hellion Vivian struggled for a while, she turned her body to block Baligaju's wage. After Baligaju saw a certain someone's actions, a faint smile flashed across his deep eyes. Then he reached out and pulled her over. His voice was low and pleasant. "Don't worry, I won't do it." "Seriously?" Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows to confirm, in order to avoid not ending up in a mess later. Baligaju nodded. Just when Hellion Vivian felt that she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. His Highness continued, "In any case, Shang Xie was the one who wanted to make a move." Hellion Vivian, as the person being confessed to, Aju's almond-shaped eyes, which were originally round, were now even bigger and brighter. She stood there in a daze as if she could not believe what she had heard. The 2 strands of hair on her head were still standing up, and her small face was exquisite and beautiful. She blinked her eyes again and again. So, the person that little brother liked was not Gu Rou but her? Li Heila's eyes widened because of this sudden news. He was in a daze. He was really not online at all. Master Bai said that he likes a Jew? I really admire your EQ. I can't believe you were able to figure it out, Xiao Lin said lightly. Li Hailu was very proud. That's because I'm very smart, okay? Xiao Lin. Smart. Hehe. However, Bai Jun finally could not hold it in anymore. His family had already found him. If he did not confess, a Jew would leave, right? Old Master Gu was also shocked. His gaze followed Aju's direction and swept across her fair wrist. His back suddenly trembled. Then he suddenly raised his head and looked at Bai Jun with flickering eyes. You agreed to my condition because of her? Yes. Bai Jun did not look at Old Master Gu again. All his attention was now on Aju. He was looking at her expression. Perhaps it was too early to say that she liked him for a girl who was not even 12 years old. But he really could not hold it in anymore. However, when this moment came, Bai Jun still felt that he had stepped into a bottomless abyss with one foot. It was more than a bottomless abyss. If a Jew hated him because of this and treated him as a pervert, what should he do? Bai Jun bent his pale fingers. The blood-colored crescent moon in his palm had already begun to bleed. However, there was not the slightest change in emotion on his face. His eyes were so deep as he stared at a Jew. There was a gentleness in his eyes that everyone could feel. Gu Qing watched from the side and clenched his fingers. But now he realized that he could only watch like this. After all the things that the Gu family had done to the little bean. So what if he sensed the strangeness in his heart? Although the 2 of them were very far away, the little bean had always thought of her little brother for everything. As for Bai Jun, he finally knew why his cousin had such great hostility towards a Jew. Bai Jun never hid the way he looked at a Jew. It was an expression that was so gentle that the corners of his mouth would smile. Everyone knew what that was. He used to think that it was because his brother doted on his sister too much. But now, Gu Qing lowered his eyes and his fingers drooped down. Old Master Gu also began to be afraid. He looked at Old Master Bai again, but he did not expect that this time he would not say anything. Old Master Bai opened his mouth to interrupt him. His voice was so deep that it was like the metal on his shoulder. Old Gu, our relationship is our relationship. I really can't believe that what you said just now came out of your mouth. If the younger generation made a mistake, just let them admit it. But you are obviously biased. Old Gu, she is either your granddaughter or your granddaughter. No matter whose child a Jew is, she is a member of the Bai family and my granddaughter. You always said that you wanted me to take into account our old relationship and your granddaughter's face. Our Jew doesn't like to eat meat. These few days the food at home has been turned into meat dishes because of you. The child hasn't said a single word. She has always been sensible. After coming to the Bai family, she is like the happy fruit of the Bai family. Bai Juan had lost his parents since he was young and could not get close to anyone. With her around, the Bai family gradually became like a family. Only then did my grandson change. If you want me to plead for you, then who will plead for the injustice of my granddaughter? When old Master Gu heard this, his face turned completely pale. If even Bai Huai did not help him, then Bai Juan would really have no scruples when he acted. The business information of the Gu family that he mentioned would be dug out by him. In other words, other than the Ju Wei group, even the Bai family had openly become enemies with them. Then the Gu family. Would they still have a way out? Chapter 1243. Gu Rou panicked as well. Her fingers tugged at old Master Bai's sleeve. Grandfather Bai, you can't not help us. Don't you also think that I'm very filial to you? Our Gu family and the Bai family have had a relationship for so many years. How can we ruin it like this? Grandfather Bai. It's obvious that a person like you has a motive for being filial. Bai Huai's gaze was as straight as his identity. Weiwei is right. I really can't treat you like a child anymore. At this point you still want to use your relationship to pressure me? Just take it that I, Bai Huai, don't care about our old friendship. I want to avenge my granddaughter. From the beginning to the end, old Master Bai did not come to denounce the Gu family because a Jew was the little princess of the Ju Wei group. In the old man's heart the matter was very simple. The video was so clear. He just wanted to seek justice for the child raised by the Bai family. Adjutant Zhang, what are you still standing there for? Throw out all these people who affect the birthday party. Old Master Bai had always been a swift and decisive person. Now that he saw Gu Rou being so clingy, he directly gave an order to the person beside him. I, Bai Huai, am not afraid of others saying that I am bullying others. Everyone is looking at the truth. Justice is in the hearts of the people. Adjutant Zhang's execution was also very strong. He pulled Gu Rou up with one hand. His strength was very strong. She actually bullied their young lady. Did she really think that she was the young madam of the Bai family? She was in charge of everything there. Adjutant Zhang had tolerated Gu Rou for a long time. This time he finally exploded. Not only Gu Rou but even Gu Qing, old Master Gu, and the two girls were all uncivilly invited out of the Bai family's birthday party. As for how they would deal with the Gu family in the future, they would not let them have an easy time. Just in front of them, the two girls who were bragging to their classmates about how luxurious and fun the Bai family's banquet was were completely listless. What was even more dumbfounded was that no one knew who was so mean as to call the students of number 1 high school and number 2 high school to watch outside the military compound. Of course, it was not easy to gather so many people in such a short period of time and at night. Every single one of those students seemed to be members of Bailey Shangxia's support team. There were already people who knew Gu Rou and the others. Now that they saw the two girls being chased out in such a sorry state, they were stunned for a moment before they all burst into laughter. These two people were so arrogant in class at that time. They wanted to suppress everyone they met. As for Gu Rou, they did not take them seriously at all. When they received the invitation to the Bai family's banquet, they even deliberately made a circle around each class, afraid that others would not know their relationship with the school hunk Bai. Now he was chased out. There was really no news that could make people happier than this news. The two girls also realized how embarrassing their current situation was. One after another, they covered their faces and screamed while rubbing against the wall to get off the bus. However, they knew very well that this was only the beginning. The Gu family was even more humiliated. Whether it was the business world or the political and military world, everyone knew what Gu Rou had done on this day. The business world would never work with the Gu family again, regardless of whether they were after profits or not. They could not afford to offend the Ju Wei group. After all, once a certain highness made a move, it was the rhythm of completely bankrupting a certain company. As for the political and military world, everyone had been chased out by the Bai family. The situation could not be any clearer. The scene of the military compound was also synchronized to the screen. Only then did the guests present know what Gu Rou and the other children were really like in the eyes of their classmates in school. They could not help but sigh again. However, Hellion Vivian looked at those girls and raised an eyebrow at her son. Did you call them here? No, I never use my fans. Bailey Shangxia paused for a moment, his eyes flashed. It's father. No wonder the manager contacted him. So it was to release the news of me. How shameless, too shameless. Indeed. Hellion Vivian laughed, but the shamelessness was wonderful. Could it be that someone had been planning to deal with the Gu family at the birthday banquet since a long time ago? That was why he had been so calm and collected the entire time. After all, he was the one who told her that the purple jade Buddha head was in the Bai family. Then why didn't a certain highness take it at that time? Even if he couldn't touch it, he could have asked any mortal to help, right? Thinking of this, Hellion Vivian felt that everything was planned, so Hellion Vivian couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Hey, have you been planning to deal with the Gu family since the beginning?" Unexpectedly, Baligaju only turned his face and glanced at her indifferently. He put one hand in his trouser pocket and raised his eyebrows. Do I need a plan to deal with them? Hellion Vivian. Don't be like this. No matter what, the Gu family is a listed multinational company worth hundreds of millions. If others heard such a disdainful tone, they would definitely have the urge to beat up a certain highness. However, without a plan, he could torture people until they were skinned. As expected of someone who had fully displayed the essence of a demon. Some people compared to losing their lives. What they cared more about was their reputation. This time the Gu family would probably suffer a fate worse than death. However, at this time, people no longer cared about what would happen to the Gu family in the future. All their attention was on the two children, Bai Juan and Aju. Although Aju was still Bai Juan's sister in name, Bai Juan was also Aju's adopter. But in reality the two of them were not related by blood. Then it would not be too unacceptable for Bai Juan to like Aju. However, Bailey Shangxia knew very well how to obstruct feelings, especially his own sister. He took a step forward. The pure black diamond earring on his left ear flickered with an evil luster as he walked. His silver hair was messy and there were many black ropes wrapped around his wrists. His entire person gave off the feeling of a blood-sucking noble. He walked in front of Bai Juan and stood still. Then he curled his lips into a smile. His voice sounded very bewitching and pleasant. No wonder his records were sold again and again. Bai Juan, right? Our family is here this time not only to thank and celebrate your birthday, but also to talk about something that my brother just said. We are going to take Aju home. Chapter 1244. Hearing this, Bai Juan's black pupils suddenly shook. Even his slender figure seemed to have been stimulated by something. He paused heavily and looked at Bailey Shangxia in disbelief. Bailey Shangxia still had a smile on the corner of his mouth, which seemed to have a hint of evil charm. Li Hailu and Shaolin could not believe what they had heard. Their faces were filled with shock as they looked at each other. They thought to themselves that they were in trouble this time. Faju was taken away just like that. What about Master Bai? He would definitely go crazy. Both of them knew that to Bai Juan, Aju was equivalent to a child that he had raised since she was young. Although Li Hailu did not know that Bai Juan liked Aju before, he also knew how many things Bai Juan had planned for Aju. This included where Aju would go to school next. It was best to find a place that was closer to the army. Even if Bai Juan joined the army, he could still apply for leave to look after Aju. Also, Aju wanted to be the abbot of a temple in the future. Bai Juan also started to make investments from business. It was to help Aju realize her wish. This was something that he would never do in the past. It was actually not easy to do these things. It was only Bai Juan who did not have any personal entertainment. He put all his thoughts and future plans on Aju. Bai Juan would definitely not be able to take it if he suddenly took Aju away. Old Master Bai also understood his grandson's thoughts, so after hearing Bailey Shangxia's words he also frowned. But since her biological parents had come to pick her up, he could not refuse to let them pick her up, right? Moreover, Aju had been looking forward to a family reunion since she was young. Although Old Master Bai was reluctant, he did not say anything in the end. He only let out a deep sigh. Bai Juan moved his fingers with difficulty. Only he knew how uncomfortable the astringent pain that surged out of his throat was. Bailey Shangxia chuckled and continued. Ajio was born with the fate of Buddha. She is at odds with our family and can't stand the chaos of the secular world. So when she was still in my mother's womb, an eminent monk came to my house and said that she had found a few fated people. Those fated people were in the temple. Although the old monk made it sound nice, I thought about it later. You must have had some problems in your heart at that time. That old monk needed my sister's Buddhist aura to solve the knot in your heart. In other words, a Jew has met you before. You might not remember. At that time you were also in the temple. After Bailey Shangxia mentioned it, Bai Juan suddenly recalled the scene when he was cultivating. Auntie, are you pregnant? In his memory, when he had just lost his parents, he had asked an auntie this question. That auntie was very beautiful. Even though she was pregnant, she gave off an aura that made people want to get close to her. Most importantly, he was really bored at that time. That's right, he was bored. No matter how his master tried to enlighten him, he still didn't seem to be interested in anything. It wasn't until that auntie appeared that he wanted to test if it was really like what people said. Every child was a gift from God to people. He remembered that he even touched that auntie's stomach at that time. He even despised that the little baby was very stupid and didn't even know how to move. In the end, as soon as he finished speaking, he felt a throbbing in the palm of his hand. It was very weak, but it was real. It was that beat that made him feel that he was still alive. The feeling of blood flowing through his palms was really hard to describe. He had once wondered in the temple when that auntie would come again. Had her baby been born? If she came again, he would definitely say a few more words to her baby. However, the heavens did not let him do as he wished. Ever since that day, his master told him that the knot in his heart had been untied and that he could go down the mountain. He did not know what knot he had in his heart. However, since his master had said so, he never felt that he needed to stay in the temple. His grandfather was very happy to hear that he had no knot in his heart. He still remembered that when he left the temple, he still regretted not seeing that auntie who was pregnant with the baby again. Later on, after he went down the mountain, he gradually forgot about this matter. At that time he had Li Hailu, Shaolin and the others. He did some evil things in the courtyard all day long and had long forgotten about the meetings in the temple. Just like that, a few years passed and his memories were recalled again. When Bai Juan looked at a Jew again, his mood was even more difficult to describe with words. He had clearly been thinking about what that child would look like when it was born. When the time came, if he saw that auntie again, he would definitely see that baby. Now, the image of that soft and cute little monk walking towards him with a serious expression when he went up the mountain to pick her up appeared in Bai Juan's mind. At that time he was thinking about how much this little monk could eat. It was not enough to hold a steamed bun in both hands, she still had to hold it in her mouth. However, it was undeniable that his heart softened towards such a Jew. He did not know if this was love at first sight. But at that moment he decided that he had to treat this child well. He really did not expect that a Jew was the little baby that he had wanted to touch again and again. A Jew's big round eyes were also blinking as she looked at Bai Juan fixedly. It's her. Bai Juan could not help but mutter in a low voice. Bailey Shangxia chuckled and said, "That's right, it's her." Originally, according to a Jew's fate, we had to wait until the cycle of the 12 zodiac signs was over. In other words, after she was 12 years old, we could only come and pick her up. I still have to thank you. If it weren't for the purple jade Buddha head that you fought for a Jew, we would have had to wait for more than a month before we could make a move. At that time a Jew might have been bullied to no end. After all, there seemed to always be girls like Gu Rou by your side. When a Jew was just brought to the Bai family, she seemed to have been treated similarly. I originally thought that that was the last time, but I didn't expect that there would still be other people around. Bai Juan's pupils constricted again and his fingers clenched again. He had to admit that Bailey Shangxia's words hit the spot that he cared about the most and could not refute the most. Bailey Shangxia took a step forward and tilted his body slightly. He lowered his voice beside his ear, with an indescribable provocation. You said that you like a Jew and want to protect her well? Even you are not strong and mature enough, how are you going to protect her? Is that how you protect her? You can find an excuse to say that you did not notice and did not know the cause and process, but it is a fact that a Jew was isolated. Chapter 1245. When Bai Juan heard this, his fingers tightened even more. He turned to the side and looked at Bailey Shangxia with his cold eyes. His voice was deep. It won't happen again in the future. He was so calm and firm like a young man. He was actually able to resist the demonic aura emitted by Bailey Shangxia's body. This made Bailey Shangxia raise his eyebrows in surprise. His black eyes gradually turned into an evil amber color. No wonder a Jew was immune to all evil when she followed him. He was probably the only one in the world who had such a righteous aura. If he had not crossed the border of life and death, he would not have formed such an aura. In addition to Bai Jun's background and his upbringing since he was young, he had become who he was now. Bailey Shangxia ignored his words. It was as if he was going to hand over his sister. He stood up straight and smiled politely. It was impossible to tell that he had just provoked Bai Jun when he turned to the side. All these years, I'm really grateful to the Bai family for raising a Jew. As he spoke, he looked at old Master Bai again. Especially thank you, Grandpa Bai. I often heard my mother say that Grandpa Bai is a forthright and narrow-minded person. He has the demeanor of an ancient general. Now that I've seen him, it's true. Others did not understand what a knot in the heart was, but old Master Bai understood it very well. Back then he had spent a lot of effort, but he still could not pull Bai Jun back from that accident. He had seen a psychiatrist and an old friend. In the end, he could only hand it over to the eminent monk. The eminent monk had once told him that his grandson had a very deep heart and wanted to wait for the true Buddha. However, at that time the eminent monk had also said that the true Buddha could not wait, and it also depended on luck. He was not sure if there would be a day when he could wait. When old Master Bai decided to send Bai Jun to the temple, he was also in the mood to give it a try. No one could understand how much an old man owed this child. As a soldier, he should indeed sacrifice to protect the majority of people. But what about the child who stayed behind? At that time, any concern for Bai Jun was a replay of the harm. On the day of the funeral, old Master Bai saw his grandson's finger being cut, but he did not feel any pain. This old general who had guarded the country for many years cried. Even if there was only the slightest possibility, he had to try. Now that he heard Bailey Shangxia say that a Jew was the person who had solved the knot in Bai Jun's heart, one could imagine how old Master Bai felt. 9. When old Master Bai spoke, his voice was a little hoarse. You are indeed the blessing that your little brother has accumulated in this lifetime. Our Bai family's little happy fruit. After hearing this, a Jew walked over with the little white cat in her hand. With a serious expression on her face, she said, "It's my fortune to be able to enter the Bai family." A Jew is right. Hellion Vivian chuckled and put her hand on her daughter's head. Bai Jun's righteousness has protected a Jew for 8 years. Chief Bai also treats a Jew as his own daughter. We will always remember this kindness. At this point she glanced at Bailey Shangxia. Bailey Shangxia, this superstar devil, only listened to 3 people in this world. His mother, his younger brother, and his younger sister. Now that Hellion Vivian had spoken, he naturally put away the demonic energy on his body and stood beside Hellion Qingshan for the time being. Bai Jun's eyes looked at the approaching Aju. Old Master Bai naturally knew his grandson's mood. He patted Bai Jun's shoulder and comforted him. It's good that Aju was taken away. You will go to the army as soon as summer arrives. When that time comes, I will also return to the border. Who will take care of Aju? Hellion Vivian also looked over. Bai Jun, you are still too young. There are too many uncertain factors around you. I have always been sure of what I want. Bai Jun couldn't help but interrupt Hellion Vivian. For the first time this youth revealed a yearning look. Hellion Vivian chuckled and said, "Yes, but when we are young we always have a lot of scruples. Bai Jun, you have something to do. Today is your 18th birthday. After you turn 18 you will be an adult. I have always admired the Bai family's way of protecting the country. I believe that this kind of magnanimous and awe-inspiring blood also flows in your body. When you are mature enough to resist everyone, wouldn't it be better to talk about love? Or could it be that you can't wait until then? Can't you control yourself?" This was a provocation. Although Bai Jun was very clear, he was even more clear that every word Hellion Vivian said was right. "I can control myself." Bai Jun looked straight at Hellion Vivian, neither servile nor overbearing. Hellion Vivian smiled. "Very good. After the birthday party is over, I will pick you up first. We will meet again when you grow up." Bai Jun clenched his hands tightly and finally let go. His voice was slow but as clear as ink. In the past, when he was studying, Haruki Murakami had said, "You have to be a calm adult. You are not allowed to be emotional, not allowed to secretly miss. Not allowed to look back and live your own life. You have to be obedient. Not all fish will live in the same sea. Growing up meant that he had to think more. Even though he was in great pain this time, he agreed willingly. So many things were being told to him. He was not strong enough. The strong ones were the Bai family, not him. That was why he had to be careful before doing anything. The Gu family was the best example. He did not want his girl to get hurt again. For all of this could only be done with power. Then he would work hard to do it. Thinking of this, Bai Juan raised his head and answered, "Oi." Everyone listened at the side and laughed. Seeing the two families like this, they were naturally in a good mood. Are they going to have a child betrothal? Bai Juan, this kid still fell into the hands of someone else in the end. Sigh. These two children are really a good match, especially a Jew. She makes people happy just by looking at her. Little silly girl. A Jew is still young. It might not be in the future. Just as people said, there were too many uncertainties in the future. Even now, Bai Juan knew very well that a Jew might not even know what she liked. In the few years that they were separated, she would definitely meet many people. If there was someone who treated her better than him, what should he do? Even if there was this kind of panic. However, Bai Juan did not change his answer. He had to be able to protect her in the future. Even if this process was very long. He was also willing. The atmosphere at the scene became lively again. Everyone raised their wine glasses and joked with old Master Bai. Although Bailey Shangxie as her brother did not say anything, he began to plan in his heart how to destroy the reunion between a Jew and Bai Juan when the time came. Enchanting really understood her brother the best. She reached out and pulled him over by the back of his collar. She also wanted to give a Jew some space to say goodbye. Chapter 1246. Bailey Shangxie listened to his younger brother. Moreover, he had not seen Enchanting for so many days, so he was extremely obedient. As a brother Khan, he knew very well when to do what. Of course, the only way for Bailey Shangxie to treat his younger brother well was to give him diamonds. I dug out 2 pieces from the demon world and 1 from Portugal. Which one do you like? Enchanting took it and looked at it on her fingertips. Not bad. Where's the one for a Jew? Bailey Shangxie took out a large handful of mermaid tears from his pocket. Each of them was priceless. I brought father to the other side. Many mermaids were scared to tears by him. I picked up a lot along the way. Enchanting thought to herself, father still has this effect now. Although a Jew did not know what her 2 brothers were talking about, it sounded like they wanted to give her something. Only then did she suddenly remember something and ran in front of Bai Juan. When Bai Juan saw her actions, he paused for a moment. He did not expect her to grab his hand. Little brother, I have a birthday present for you. I tied it outside the door. I was afraid that it would bite people randomly, so I suppressed it with force. As a Jew spoke, she pulled Bai Juan out. She panted like a little tiger that had not grown up yet. Even though she already had the appearance of a young girl, she was still a child. She might not understand what his confession meant at all. After all, even if she liked someone, there were many kinds of feelings. Bai Juan held her wrist and tightened his grip slightly. There was an indescribable sour feeling in his heart. After a long while, he took a deep breath and did not say anything. Instead, he continued to let her hold his hand. At the very least, she did not hate him and completely ignore him, right? Bai Juan told her this, but he still could not help but ask, liking someone is different from liking someone, right? A Jew raised her head in confusion and looked at Bai Juan's face in the fog. However, in the white fog she did not see anything other than his outline. Bai Juan did not continue this topic. Instead he laughed softly. Where is the gift you want to give me? It's right in front. A Jew continued to pull Bai Juan forward. This time Bailey Shangxie didn't ruin it. After all, there would be plenty of chances to ruin it in the future. If he showed his impolite side in front of his sister, it wouldn't be worth it. Xiao Lin and Li Hailu did not follow him because they knew that if a Jew really wanted to leave, this might be the last night Lord Bai could stay with her. The military compound was quiet in winter. Amidst the boundless snow, the 2 of them, one deep and one shallow, tread on the snow as they made their way to the wall. Over there. A Jew pointed at a lump of white in the darkness. She let go of Bai Juan's hand and ran over. When Bai Juan saw that huge creature, his black eyes were slightly stunned. That was Alaska? Didn't you want a large dog before? A Jew picked up Alaska's head. Little All is not bad. Its teeth are a little sharp, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't dare to bite people in front of me. Alaska was about to faint from the shaking. Come on, why did this little girl look so cute and fight so fiercely? And what was the background of her brother? This youth in front of it was more normal. If it had to choose a master, it would choose this youth. Woof woof woof. Alaska barked softly and kept using its head to gently touch Baijuan's long legs. Its look of begging for adoption was simply too pitiful. Baijuan also understood a Jew. He knew that she did not have the strength to wear Alaska's heavy rings. No dog could withstand it, even if it was a large dog. However, a Jew did not know it herself. She was still expressing her opinion with a serious expression. The 2 strands of hair on her head stood up. Little brother, it seems that little Allah really likes you. When it sees me, it is never like this. It only knows how to play with me. If I don't play with it, it will be unhappy. Alaska was speechless. Do you think my desperate struggle is all for fun? Boss, I am clearly using my life to escape. Baijuan looked at the man and dog in front of him and suddenly smiled. He was gentle and cold to the bone. He was wearing a pure white windbreaker. He had black hair and red lips. His skin was as white as jade. His thin lips were slightly raised. He was very good-looking. He was the one who thought too much about things. A Jew was originally like this. Her thoughts were different from others. To be good to a person, it took all her strength. She was still in a daze. He just had to wait for her to understand. Even if she did not understand, it did not matter. Anyway, a person as slow as a Jew could automatically block a lot of peach blossoms. Little brother, little brother? A Jew called Baijuan twice in a row. Don't you like the birthday present I gave you? Baijuan patted Alaska's head and finally saved it. I like it very much. He remembered that he really wanted to raise a large dog. Other than his grandfather, there was only a Jew. He was clearly an adult, but he always had to be comforted by a child. It seemed that it had been like this since the past. He would always be the one who was healed. As long as little brother likes it. A Jew finally let go of the Alaska. Then she heaved a sigh of relief. The gift she gave was not so useless. The strength of the sled dog showed what it meant to struggle at death's door. It stuck out its tongue and panted. In its heart, tears had already flowed like a river. It had finally escaped from the clutches of the tiger. How touching! Baijuan's fair fingers caressed the big dog in his palm. His broken hair hung down and covered his eyes, making it impossible to see his expression clearly. In the snow and dust that filled the sky, only his low voice could be heard. A Jew. Huh. A Jew looked at Baijuan with her round eyes. Baijuan smiled lightly and instructed, "Go back to your parents and be obedient." Yes. A Jew nodded heavily and smiled as well. The fog in front of her gradually dissipated. A gentle breeze blew past, sending waves of sweet fragrance of flowers. Baijuan squatted down with a smile on his slender and tall figure. He reached out and gently pushed away the soft black hair on a Jew's forehead. Then he leaned over and kissed a Jew's forehead. He whispered a few words in her ear, containing all the feelings of a youth because of his deep affection for her. He said, "A Jew, don't forget me. Who asked you to be the school belle and more handsome than me? A certain man." It was said that not long after the Bai family's banquet, other than Gu Cheng's bloodline, the entire Gu family was defeated beyond recognition. The person who made the move was not Hellion, Vivian and the others, but the rumored young master Bai who had begun to take over the Bai family. In the same year, before the spring festival at the distant border near Nepal beside the vast snowy mountains, suddenly a long sound came from afar. It was a military truck. Under normal circumstances, such a car's license plate was very hard. It was a truck that would only pass through with special permission. It was different from other trucks. Although this truck looked very big from the outside, there were less than 7 soldiers sitting in the carriage. Each of them looked different, but there was one thing that was the same. That was, they were all less than 30 years old. Some people said that in Huaxia, the peak age of a man's physical strength was between 23 and 29 years old. Therefore, when selecting elites, they would also choose according to this standard. Under normal circumstances, 26 years old was the most common because people at this age would gradually stabilize their state of mind and become a real soldier. But this time it was very strange. There was actually a youth who looked even better than a celebrity on the truck. The rest of the people even doubted whether he had graduated from high school or not. Moreover, he did not look like a rough man at all. Instead, his entire body exuded a kind of carefully cultivated nobility. The most different thing was that the youth was even calmer than them. Ever since he got on the bus, he had been quietly leaning in the corner. Although he did not close his eyes, he was very indifferent. Everyone in the carriage was wearing camouflage clothes. It had to be said that the camouflage clothes in the army were really a test of one's figure. Those who did not have a good figure wore it as if it was bought from Taobao for dozens of yuan. Only those with a good figure could wear this outfit with a refreshing look. It was believed that the students who had undergone military training had experienced it. However, there were very few people like this youth who could wear the camouflage clothes with such vigor. That set of clothes seemed to have been specially made for him. Every line was perfectly sculpted. Everyone couldn't help but look at the young man. Different thoughts flashed through their calm eyes. These people were the cream of the crop that had been carefully selected from various military regions and units. Under normal circumstances, the selection process was very strict. They had to go through the professional training and special screening of the local forces. One person was chosen from each unit. Only all the soldiers in the war could come here. But this youth, did he really have such great ability? Moreover, even if they came here, they would become nothing in the next second. Because this was the most elite special forces brigade in the country. Only the best soldiers were qualified to stay in this place. Here, every soldier had to forget their names and use code names to replace them. Even their identities would be concealed layer by layer. It was only for training to be the best to deal with foreign enemies. But how could such a place let a high school student who had not even grown hair come to? Everyone doubted the youth's ability. At this time the truck stopped. A loud shout came from outside. "Get off, all of you, get off." Chapter 1248. The few people in the military truck were like startled beasts. Their movements were very agile. They carried military backpacks and jumped down one by one. After letting them go, the military truck drove away with a rumble. They didn't even give these recruits a chance to regret. The sun slowly set. In the distance, there was an endless stretch of snowy mountains and a dense forest beside them. This kind of terrain was the most suitable for jungle combat training. As expected of the flying tiger's sharp blades. Even the location was different from the other troops. Those people looked at each other and saw excitement in each other's eyes. But the strange thing was, why didn't anyone come to pick them up? Other than the words, "get off," they heard in the car, the surroundings were completely quiet. There was not a single person in sight for miles in the wilderness. Where are they? Could it be that they're hiding and want to give us a surprise? Just like when we were new recruits. That's good. It's best if there's meat to eat. After sitting in the truck for 2 days and 1 night, I want to eat a good meal now. These few days I've been eating compressed biscuits until my mouth is almost empty. Just as these men were conversing with each other, talking and laughing, the young man's left ear suddenly moved. He turned his well-defined handsome face, and a trace of ice-cold sharpness flashed across his deep and pure black eyes. "No one's here yet? Alright, let's introduce ourselves first. My name is Li Lei Ting. I'm from the new city. What about you?" "My name is Bai Dolly. My hometown is Linxi." "White coat. This name of yours is really artistic." "It's not a white coat, it's a black coat." "It's the same anyway. Brother, what about you? Where are you from?" "Let's talk about our troops." "I'm from the army." "What about you?" "Me. From the sea." "I heard that the Navy's selection is very strict." "It's not as strict as the army. It's not easy for you to have a special forces soldier." At this point, a few people's gazes landed on the young man who had not spoken. He seemed to be looking at something but also seemed to be looking at nothing. It was just that his young side profile gave people a noble and sharp aura. "Hey little brother, which army are you from? Where are you from?" The young man glanced at them. His eyes were as deep as a well, giving people an unfathomable illusion. "Viper." "What?" Those people wondered if their ears were playing tricks on them. One of them sneered, "Code name?" At this time he was still using a code name to replace his real name. Was he unwilling to say which unit he was from? Or do you not want others to know how you were chosen? The young man glanced over and glanced at him indifferently but didn't say anything. Perhaps it was because of his attitude that the man's sneer deepened. I really didn't expect the local government to be so corrupt. What kind of place is Liren? They actually dared to send anyone here. I don't know how much family connections they used. However, little brother, as someone who has been there before, let me give you a piece of advice. Look at me and that Lu Jun who looks twice as strong as you. Each of us has endured a few years in the army to get here. This experience is not something that a person who entered the selection based on his background can have. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Liren is not a place where you can enter as you please. Even if you enter, you won't have the strength. When the time comes, you will only die. Since your family has power and influence, why don't you enjoy life at home and give other real soldiers a chance? Don't be like this. We will be comrades in the future. What comrades? I don't have such a comrade. He has soft skin and tender flesh. When the time comes for a mission, he will drag us down. Ask him if he dares to touch a gun. Don't be like this. Chapter 1249. Clearly the previous batch was not like this. Their artificial smoke bomb had completely wiped out the other party. Therefore at that time he even boasted in front of the captain that the two of them were enough for this batch. It was enough to give these new soldiers a show of strength. He did not expect that the sneak attack would fail and that he would be threatened by someone with a gun. In fact, those 5 people were indeed quite easy to deal with. Except for the one in front of him. Thinking of this, the cannoneer narrowed his eyes and said to the youth, "Since you know that we are veterans, hurry up and put away your gun." After the youth heard this, his thin lips curled up. That smile more or less had the meaning of winter snow melting, so handsome that it was somewhat unreasonable. He turned his head and exerted force with his arm. With a click, he saw that there was not a single bullet in the gun compartment. Seeing this, the cannoneer cursed again. "Damn it! I've been fooled. Where did this scourge come from? Why are you so scheming? You're still so stubborn even though you don't have any bullets in your gun. You can really pretend." The other person didn't say anything because he noticed the thin layer of calluses on the youth's hand. Although it wasn't as obvious as the tip of the index finger, it could be seen with a closer look. Not everyone would leave calluses on the tip of their thumb. Only those who were used to using long-range spears would be able to leave such a mark on their hand. Could it be that this was a sniper? Alright, take out the gun that you used to act cool. The cannoneer's personality was very carefree. The sharp blades are so welcoming. Your batch is considered qualified, right? You don't have to be sent back to your original army. Hey, those few over there. Have you been blown silly? If you haven't been blown silly, then line up and register immediately. Hearing this, the other 5 people also understood what was going on. It turned out that all the ambush attacks just now, including the sudden bombing, were all tests of their reaction and observation ability. However, they did not notice it at all. At the moment of the explosion, their entire minds were blank. They thought that they had encountered some foreign invasion attack. One of the 5 people felt as if his face had been punched head-on. It was burning with pain. He could not say whether it was shame or something else. Depression pressed down on his chest, making waves of stuffiness. If it wasn't for the extraordinary quick-wittedness of the youth he was mocking, they would all be dead by now. Not only that, but they might also be sent back to their original units. This made him feel lucky but also made him feel like he had been slapped in the face. Even now, he did not believe that this young man had been selected based on his own strength. At the end of the day, he was just lucky. Perhaps he had already discovered the people hiding in the forest. He just didn't tell them and wanted to be in the limelight. Thinking of this, the man took a step forward, clicked his heels and saluted the 2 people who greeted them and said in a loud voice, "Reporting Lint Marine 114 reporting. They only asked you to report your designation. No one asked you to report your name and no one asked you to report your military branch." The cannoneer glanced at him. "We heard your self-introduction just now. Number 114, right? When you introduce yourself in the future, you can say your code name or your number. But there is one thing you must remember when you come to Sharp Blade. Don't say your name. Because a name can leak too much information, not to mention that you even said your original unit. This makes people wonder if you have undergone professional confidentiality training." Lint's face alternated between red and white. He had revealed his identity as a Marine in order to let people know his achievements. But he did not expect to be reprimanded like this. He was one of the top elites in his original unit. He had always been praised, and it had been a long time since he had been treated like this. Moreover, this person had specially brought up the matter of his name. Was he trying to curry favor with that brat? Lint was very unconvinced. But this was Sharp Blade, so he had to obey. Yes. The cannoneer glanced at him again and did not say anything else. In any case, after a few days of grinding like this, he would become obedient. If he was not obedient, he would directly return to his original unit. What about you? He turned his head and continued to ask. Following that, everyone reported their numbers, including the young man. Very good, now line up in a line. The cannoneer carried the long gun in his hand. I still need you to run for a while. Lint still felt uncomfortable thinking about it. After all, he had just arrived and had lost face in front of so many people. How could he continue to mingle when the time came? So after lining up, Lint opened his mouth again. Reporting. Speak. The gunner furrowed his brows. Lint glanced at the youth intentionally or unintentionally. He continued, Sir, I heard that Sharp Blade has never paid attention to special conditions. No matter how powerful or influential you are, you will not be selected. You have to go through a strict selection. Under normal circumstances, those who can be selected into Sharp Blade are all over 23 years old. They have amazing results in their original unit. Even their psychological quality and professional knowledge have to be strong before they can be selected. But now, I want to ask if Sharp Blade's selection is still the same as before. The cannoneer stopped walking and turned around to look at him. Are you questioning Sharp Blade? Not at all. Lint shouted and then looked at the youth. I just feel that some of my comrades are too young. Anyone who heard this knew who he was referring to, because it was too obvious. He spoke to his age and then spoke to his background. When the youth heard this, he turned his head. The smile on his mouth did not reach his eyes. Instead, it was cold and lazy. When the cannoneer saw this, he also laughed. I say, are you mistaken? If it weren't for the young comrade you mentioned, your batch would have gone back long ago. Would we have kept you until now? None of the 5 of you reacted quickly. How dare you say that you're from the Navy? You don't even have the least bit of vigilance. Are you doubting Sharp Blade? If you don't want to come, then get lost. This is not a nursery. Lint's face was completely drained of blood. He seemed to be extremely angry and his chest heaved. I don't mean anything else by saying these words. I just want to ask clearly. Could it be that Sharp Blade can't stand to ask now? How is Sharp Blade? It's not something that someone like you who likes to use your own thoughts to guess others can understand. What's wrong with the Navy this year? They recommended a person who likes to gossip. Didn't your original unit tell you that when you come to Sharp Blade, you should shut your mouth? Chapter 1250. The cannoneer was really infuriated by Lin T's words. Sharp Blade was China's special forces. Every time they did something, it would not be recorded. In other words, even if some of them bled or even sacrificed themselves, no one would know. When they protected the country, all they wanted was a little trust. When they picked up their guns and opened their eyes, their first thought was this territory. The Special Forces soldiers she saw on TV were not them either. Sharp Blade had always been particular about coming and going like the wind. They would not walk in front of the curtain. This was the combat characteristic of China's special forces. Everyone who came here had to forget their true selves. They only had to remember one sentence at all times: protect the country from being invaded. They could not reveal their identities for missions that needed to be completed outside the country. Once the information was leaked, the problem they would face was not as simple as a mission failure. Therefore, even if they were captured, they could not leave any traces of belonging to the army. Sacrifice yourself to keep the secret. This might sound unbelievable. However, everyone in the Sharp Blade did this. However, it was such a self-righteous person who touched the bottom line of the cannoneer's heart every time he asked a question. He reached out and pulled Lin T's clothes over. His face was close to him. Either endure it or get lost. Lin T sneered. Then he pushed the cannoneer's arm away. So be it. I don't want to stay in such a Sharp Blade. If my family has power and influence, I can enter. What's the difference between this and the other troops? The officer who received the new recruits is so obviously biased. What fierce tiger of China? I think it's just worthy of its name. The cannoneer's eyes darkened. He stared at the Navy called Lin Te. Lin Tae looked like he was saying, even if you accept other people's benefits, even if I return to my original army, I won't be chased away by you. I don't want to stay here. He even made himself look like he had a backbone. The cannoneer was so angry that he clenched his left hand. Before he could move, then a loud bang was heard. A bullet brushed past the left side of Lin Tae's face. The shooting technique was extremely accurate. If there was even the slightest deviation, Lin Tae would definitely be injured. However, it was obvious that the other party was just warning him. Lin Tae's gaze immediately changed. His entire body was shocked. The young man took his gun and walked over. His voice was very indifferent. First, who told you that I came in because of my family's influence? Secondly, haven't you been guessing that there's someone in my house? I can answer you right now. My family does have a lot of power, but I don't need that kind of power to beat someone like you. You? Lin Tae was simply choked by the youth's arrogance. He was just about to say, why are you so arrogant? Aren't you relying on the older generation? Right at this moment, an off-road Hummer ferociously drove over from a distance, interrupting the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Only the word Tang was written on the car. Not to mention the cannoneer who came to welcome the new recruits. Even Lin Tae knew what the word Tang meant. The Tang sect was established with the sole purpose of solving special cases outside of the country. Unless one was a rare talent of the country, even if one's father was a first-class military officer, it would be difficult for one to enter this group. What made people concerned was that Liren had not yet undergone the internal selection. Why were they here? Just as the cannoneer was feeling puzzled, he saw a person walk out of the car. His face was calm. He could not be said to be handsome, but his morale was absolutely intimidating. Bai Juan, a soldier of the land, sea and air forces, step out. A soldier of the land? Who is so awesome? Since when was such an all-round talent able to be trained in this place? Just as everyone was about to be shocked, the young man with the gun took a heavy step forward with his military shoes. His military uniform was straight and stunning. Here. That's right. This young man was none other than Bai Juan, who had joined the army. Compared to when he first joined the army, his skin color was a little darker. However, this only made him more angular. Under the reflection of the military uniform, his deep eyes seemed to be able to hold the mountains and rivers of the world, causing people's eyes to light up involuntarily. We've been waiting for you for a long time. I heard from young Master Tang that your computer is very good, right? Do you know how to attack the network? The person beside the car looked at Bai Juan with an expression of being saved. We all have equipment. Bai Juan's voice still did not change much. I've learned it. Don't be modest. Before you came, the commander of your original army gave me a call. At such a young age, you turned defeat into victory by yourself in a jungle battle and directly destroyed the enemy's regiment commander. Such a grand feat is rare in the army. I heard that the commander of the enemy's battle was extremely angry because of you. When that person said this, he patted Bai Juan's shoulder very straightforwardly. What we need is a comrade like you. You're shameless and black-bellied. Bai Juan's expression was indifferent. You flatter me. It's just that Chief Xiao's temper is more hot-tempered. No wonder the other party's chief was angry. This soldier was not afraid of anyone. That person seemed to have obtained a treasure and laughed out loud again. Quickly get in the car. I'll give you a mission first. Okay. Bai Juan supported himself with one hand and jumped into the car. His movements were very handsome. That person sat on the Hummer and said to the cannoneer, I'll take our specially recruited soldiers first. As for the rest, some of them are not suitable to stay here. Don't talk so much to them. Just let them leave. A sharp blade does not nurture people who hold grudges. This last sentence was like a slap to Lin Tae's face. Sir. The cannoneer respectfully stood up straight and saluted that person. Lin Tae was still watching this scene. His eyes were wide open and his pupils were filled with disbelief. However, Bai Juan did not even look at him again. He just sat in the passenger seat of the Hummer in a cool manner. His young side profile was like a blade. Then the Hummer flew away, leaving only a thin layer of sand and dust behind. For a moment, the other 5 people, including the veterans who came to welcome the new recruits, had different feelings in their hearts. This was because they all knew that being able to get into that car meant that the other party had already become one of the top soldiers in the country. The cannoneer opened his mouth again, his voice was neither calm nor indifferent. Now you've seen it. He didn't rely on his family background but on his strength to enter the sharp blade. I believe that you should also know that there are at most 3 people in the country who can be recruited into the Tricky Special Forces. He is one of them. Think about his strength before you speak. He doesn't want to make a move. If he wants to make a move, 10 of you won't be able to defeat one of him. You always think that you're so powerful. Alright, the commander has just spoken. You just wait here. In 3 minutes, a car will come to pick you up and bring you back to your original army. As he spoke, he walked over. Remember, don't talk so much in the future. Chapter 1251. Lin Tay was so regretful that his intestines turned green. He had only said it casually. Being sent back by the sharp blades before he even joined the army would become the biggest joke on him. The original army would not be happy to see him go back. After the other troops heard about this, they would not accept him either. However, it was already too late. It was precisely because Bai Juan had realized the importance of the sharp blades that he would not give people like Lin Tay the slightest chance to stay. The sharp blades were the elites guarding the border of the motherland. If the people guarding this line of defense were not determined enough, then what about the people who lived inside? Uncle Tang had once said that the reason why he picked up a gun was because he did not want the girl he wanted to protect to see any war on our land one day. He was the same. The stronger he was, the more he could protect. He would not allow anyone on the national defense line to be like this. That was because his Aju lived there. It was 8 million kilometers away from him. So he would not allow it. The military Hummer sped through the no-man's land. The wind gradually grew stronger. To the east of Nepal, floating clouds floated past. The driver was very curious about Bai Juan. He casually asked, "The chief of your army is actually willing to let you come?" It had always been difficult for them to get people. Why was it so easy when it came to this guy? He was such a handsome group treasure and his computer skills were especially good. It was said that his education was also very good. Shouldn't this kind of person be cherished in his own army? Bai Juan listened to his words and thought for a while. The corners of his mouth curled up. I guess he is setting off firecrackers now. That person did not understand. He only felt that the youth's expression now had an indescribable sense of blackness. Bai Juan continued, his voice slow. To celebrate my departure. However, he would soon regret it. There was a burst of crackling sounds. The special forces of a certain military region were really setting off firecrackers as Bai Juan had said. The chief surnamed Zhao even specially asked the adjutant beside him, "Are you sure that kid was not sent back by the sharp blades?" "Chief, you forgot about this." The other side took the initiative to ask for him. "They probably won't send him back to us." "That's because they haven't understood that kid's character yet." The chief surnamed Zhao walked over and over again. "But even if they want to send him back, we won't take him back. It's not enough to be tricked once. I won't be tricked by him a second time. Go and tell them to set off the firecrackers again." Set off again? Release. That infuriating brat is finally gone. I'm so happy. It must be celebrated. The adjutant was speechless. This was the first time that the bureau chief couldn't do anything to the special forces soldiers. Speaking of which, Lord Bai was considered to be one of the best. But thinking about it carefully, if Lord Bai left, what would happen to those brats below? At the thought of this, the adjutant immediately reported to the old chief. "What are you stuttering for? If you have something to say, just say it." Leader Zhao's words were rather heroic. The chief had spoken. The adjutant closed his eyes and braced himself. "Chief, once Bai Juan leaves, who will be able to hold the fort in the future? The few people on our side are either perverted or the third generation of the military. Other than Bai Juan who can treat them, anyone else will be skinned alive and become a problem group. Do you think we should write a letter to Sharp Blade and ask them to release Bai Juan as soon as possible?" When Leader Zhao heard this, he was so angry that his cheeks puffed up. "Are you saying that I can't control my subordinates who came from the compound?" "Yes." No, I mean they are hard to control, hard to control." The adjutant wiped his sweat as he spoke. Leader Zhao was very proud. "If you don't write, I don't believe it. Without Bai Juan, why can't I do it? Wait a minute, go out and take a look. Why is there no sound outside?" Before the adjutant could do anything, someone came from outside. reporting to the chief. Speak. Leader Zhao took a sip of tea in satisfaction. The soldier hurriedly said, they know that Master Bai has left. Now they are planning to feed all your favorite kin food to Favorite. Favorite was an Alaskan sled dog that Bai Jun had brought with him ever since he joined the army. Now because Bai Jun was going to Sharp Blade, he could only leave it in the original army for the time being. It was said that a loyal dog followed its master, so this military dog was not to be trifled with. Leader Zhao was so angry that his head hurt. Why are you telling me this kind of thing? Let their captain control them. But you also said that those people's backgrounds are not simple. What if something happens? Moreover, they did not violate the military order. All the indicators are qualified. They just bought all the canned food that you like to eat. The little soldier did not dare to speak loudly. He only buzzed like a mosquito, afraid that he would anger their chief. However, no matter how soft his voice was, Leader Zhao still heard it. This group of little brats were simply too immoral. Adjutant. Make the call. Call where? Call Sharp Blade. Tell them to quickly finish using Bai Jun and let him come back. The adjutant coughed softly. You were just setting off firecrackers to celebrate his departure. I regret it now, okay? Leader Zhao really felt that he could not be the chief anymore. That kid Bai Jun had definitely expected such a scene. As Leader Zhao thought about the last time he met Bai Jun, he gritted his teeth. No wonder that kid looked at me with such a meaningful smile when I gloated and handed the transfer order to him. He even told me not to regret recommending him. At that time I was still thinking that I might be so happy that he left. How could I regret it? This brat, hang up the phone and call him back. However, the news given by the other side was that Sharp Blade was not willing to let him go. Bai Jun did not plan to go back in a short period of time. Just like that, time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, the grass grew and the orioles flew. 3 years later, in early autumn, September. This was the month when all universities welcomed new students into the school. Whether it was the airport or the train station, especially the train station, one could see the signs of various universities welcoming new students at the entrance. The campus was bustling with noise and excitement. Every second and third year senior was looking forward to having a beautiful junior for them to pursue. Therefore, most of the boys still liked to welcome new students. The entrance of the long-established A University was as crowded as all the other universities. Some people were sent to school by their parents, while others sat from south to north for more than 10 hours just for the sake of this dream school. Most of the girls who were dragging their luggage were already sweating profusely when they reached the school gate. With their senior brothers and sisters coming to pick them up, they could heave a sigh of relief. However, there was one person in the middle who was not like this. Not only did she carry her own suitcase, but she also easily carried the suitcase of the girl next to her with one hand. Chapter 1252. The girl next to her was already dumbfounded. It was not because of anything else, but because the person who helped her carry the suitcase was even younger than her. The side of her face was fair and exquisite, and her eyelashes were so thick that they seemed to have been planted. They were as dark as crow feathers, casting a beautiful shadow under her eyes. Her hair was very long like black satin. As she carried the suitcase, it slid over her trendy long jacket that ended at her knees and her fair and slender legs. She was so beautiful that it was indescribable. Her eyes were round. Even though she had grown up, she still gave people the feeling of a little tiger. Such a person had a white cat lying on her head, wagging her tail back and forth. She was simply like a character in a comic, beautiful and cute. Who else could it be but a Jew? She was now 16 years old and had long returned to her original surname by Legio. After she grew up, her figure was really good. Due to her excellent genes, although she was not old, she had already grown to 168 centimeters. Under her A4 waist were 2 slender and fair legs. Her legs were very good-looking. She stood straight on a pair of white canvas shoes full of youth. Look, there's one there. What? A beauty. She looks so pure. You guys sit down. I'll send this girl upstairs. I'll go too. The 3 seniors leaned over one after another, their faces curled into a smile that they thought was handsome. One of them immediately said, Junior, are you going to enter this dormitory building? Shall we send you upstairs? No thank you. A Jew turned her head and smiled. Her face was even more beautiful with red lips and white teeth. She looked like a natural person. The senior immediately said, "Don't be so polite. We'll all be schoolmates in the future. Look at you, a girl, you're so thin. There's no elevator in this dormitory building. It's tiring to carry so many suitcases up the stairs. We'll help you. This suitcase is not light. I'm afraid you won't be able to carry it," a Jew said with a serious face. When the three seniors heard this, they burst into laughter. One of them put his hand on the other person's shoulder. "Go, Old Yang, show our little junior how strong you are." "No problem." Old Yang made an okay gesture. Old Yang is a sportsman. He can carry 2 or 3 boxes like yours without a problem. A Jew saw that it was difficult to refuse such kindness. She tilted her head and thought for a moment. She put the box on the ground and said, "If you can't carry it, tell me." "I say, junior sister, why don't you trust your senior brother so much? Your senior brother is famous for his strength. Who in our university doesn't know that I, Old Yang, am strong?" Old Yang couldn't say the words infinite strength, because all of his strength was channeled into his right hand that was holding the suitcase. He gritted his teeth tightly. "Oh my God, why is this suitcase so heavy? Senior brother? It's fine, it's fine. I didn't perform well just now." After Old Yang finished speaking, he used all his strength to lift the box with both hands, but in less than 3 seconds he put it back with a plop. At this moment, the surrounding people all looked in their direction. The other 2 senior brothers immediately leaned over and whispered, "Old Yang, what's wrong with you? Why are you dropping the ball at such a crucial time? All the new juniors are watching. Don't embarrass us." "No, damn it, this suitcase is so heavy." "How heavy can a suitcase be? If you can't do it, just say it. Don't find excuses." Just now, the beautiful junior sister was carrying 2 big suitcases by herself. "Don't just stand there and talk. If you don't believe me, you can try it. If you can carry that suitcase upstairs, I'll treat you to a small cafeteria for a week. As long as you can get the beautiful junior sister's WeChat number, it'll be fine. You guys carry it first." "Hey, I don't believe that I can't even carry a suitcase." As that person spoke, the veins on his forehead tightened. When he saw the beautiful junior sister looking at him with a meaningful gaze, he smiled awkwardly. "Then junior sister, what's in this suitcase of yours?" "Some daily necessities." There was the black crystal given by her big brother, who said that it could be used as a small table lamp after dark. There was the dismantled gun parts given by her second brother, and a super notebook disguised as a small suitcase. There was also the gravity buckle that she usually used. This time the gravity buckle was given to her by her mother. It was said that it was made of black ice iron. Its surface was silver and it looked like a beautiful bracelet on her hand. However, each of them weighed no less than 20 kilograms. Her mother put 4 of them in a suitcase, 2 on her wrists and 2 on her ankles. After all, she had to undergo military training after school started. Once military training started, she had to walk in a straight line or train to fight. Wearing the gravity buckle would not hurt others too much. These things were all put into a suitcase by her. Obviously, those senior brothers did not know that the daily necessities in this person's mouth would be so different from others. They all looked at each other and the 3 of them worked together to lift the suitcase. However, it was still trembling. The suitcase seemed to be able to be dragged on the ground at any time, and it could not be lifted up the stairs at all. It made their faces and necks red. The onlookers all stopped and burst into laughter. A Jew did not want to make things difficult for them anymore. She walked over and said softly, "Senior brothers, I'll take the suitcase. You guys go and help the other sisters. Don't help whoever is beautiful. Also, I won't tell you my WeChat." These words were like a violent blow to the 3 boys. Next, they watched as the extremely beautiful junior sister walked past them. She carried the 2 suitcases effortlessly and walked up the stairs as if she was flying. This was really a slap in the face. The 3 seniors looked at each other and hugged their heads and cried bitterly. Since when can't we even beat a weak girl? Therefore, on the first day of school, the campus forum of University A posted a list of boyfriend strength. The one who won the first place was not a sophomore or a junior, nor was it a member of the basketball club. Instead, it was a newly enrolled beauty by Legio. He was really a boyfriend all day long. He helped many girls carry their luggage. Sometimes he even looked cute and had 2 strands of hair on his head. Because she was the youngest and was a great skipper, most people immediately liked her when they saw her. Moreover, where was this place? University, the capital. Many of the people who were admitted here came from number 1 high school. In other words, some of the senior sisters who were Aju's fangirls in number 1 high school immediately ran over to watch when they heard someone use the name by Legio to report. When they saw that it was the cute little Aju from back then, they wanted to pounce on her and kiss her. Chapter 1253. Back then, after Aju was picked up by her family, she went to England. Then Vivian took her to many countries. There was no need to worry about her education. With Hellion Qingchen, the top student, Aju mastered all the high school knowledge in half a year of self-study. The place where the family went the most was India. Aju liked to study the Buddhist Dharma, so Bailey Shangxie and the others often brought their sister there for a stroll. When the Indian monks saw their family, they began to chant scriptures without any regard for their lives. They were mainly chanting to His Highness. Unfortunately, no matter how powerful the eminent monks were, they would be suppressed and unable to move in front of His Highness. Those scriptures were all in vain. However, after following her 2 brothers and her father, Aju also began to learn how to be two-faced. She mainly learned it from her father. However, her two-faced nature was still kind and would not be as extreme as Baligaju. In other words, Aju had not appeared in the capital for more than 3 years. Now she had finally returned. Every school was the same. The first day of school was only to report and get acquainted with the classroom. There would not be any classes. The tutor used the evening self-study time to let the students finish their self-introductions. Then he announced that the official military training would begin tomorrow. It would last 10 days. The local officers would come to University A for training. Students who were not feeling well would report the situation in advance. When the tutor said these things, it was inevitable that there would be people gossiping below. Hey, do you know? I heard that the officers invited by University A every year are especially handsome. It's said that they are different from the recruits invited by other schools. Those who can come to University A for training are all sergeants and above. It's not like they're high-ranking people. They're just handsome. It's true. If you don't believe me, look at the batch of officers on our school's forum last year. At the very least, they're very tall. There's nothing crooked about them. Let me see. Hey, isn't this? 2 or 3 girls gathered together. Not long after, last year's military training photos were dug up. Not to mention those people all had noses and eyes. Even if they were not shockingly handsome, they were still considered tough. I wonder what the officers this year look like. Every girl had an innate sense of worship for soldiers. In their imagination, they always had an extra layer of brilliance compared to ordinary boys. It had to be said that because University A was the capital of the country, even the military officers were very good. But this time, there was a very big accident. It was night, and the moonlight shone in through the window, dyeing the shadows of the backlight with a layer of hairy edges. Only 2 people sat in the large military conference room. He was in his 50s, and the stars on his shoulders dazzled his eyes. However, he was the one who was standing, and his expression was very impatient. He walked over in front of the desk with his hands behind his back. The one sitting there was a young man in his early 20s. He had a bright smile on his face. It had to be said that under such circumstances, such a smile was full of black-bellied intentions. Logically speaking, at his age he should still be in university. However, the young man was not like that. He wore many medals on his shoulders, which were only given to those who had truly made contributions. The young man's outline was very distinct, and the line from his forehead to his chin seemed to flash with a fuzzy light when the light shone on his handsome side profile. The lines and corners were well defined as if they had been carved. It was so perfect that it was amazing. However, he did not feel anything. He leaned lazily on the back of the chair. If it were not for the handsome military uniform on his body, no one would be able to tell that he was a soldier. The atmosphere in the conference room was a little strange. The smile with the biggest star was a little bit of gnashing teeth. What did you say you were going to do? Military training for university students? Yes. That person smiled softly. Chief Xiao was really angry. You're going to take over my position and you're going to go out and do military training for university students? You're the king of soldiers from Sharp Blade, not those newbies. I won't allow you to go. Chief, I don't have a mission now. I'm on vacation. And aren't you afraid that if you don't allow me to go, your favorite canned food will be bought out? That person also stood up. He was very polite, but the words he said were very infuriating. Chief Xiao gritted his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. Tell me, what do you want to do in university? I don't want to answer personal questions. That person still had a faint smile on his face. Chief Xiao wanted to use something to stab someone. The adjutant hiding in the corner rushed over and hugged the old chief's waist. Chief, don't be rash. I don't think Master Bai meant that. Look, he's about to take over your position. There's no need to anger you again before you leave, right? Then what is he doing now? Chief Xiao turned around and roared. The adjutant tiptoed and began to whisper in his ear. Let him go. You can have a few days of peace. He did leave back then. He went to the sharp blade for 3 years. I was in pain for 3 years. Chief Xiao roared in a low voice. The adjutant reminded him, think about this year's conference. When that person gave him the award, he mainly praised our army. He even said that our army is different from before. We are no longer a useless second-generation army. We can finally become the king of soldiers. Think about the battle achievements that he won for you. Also, last time there was Commander Liang from the neighboring army. When he saw you, he was always arrogant and said that we were a problem army that couldn't produce results. It wasn't until last year that he shut his mouth. When he saw you, he took a detour. This is all because of Bai Juan. So you have to be patient. Chief Xiao carefully recalled the attitude of his sworn enemy and comrade during the conference 2 days ago. He instantly felt that it was not a big deal to be angered by a certain brat. However, if he leaves, what if those bastards rebel again? Chief Xiao's voice was extremely low. After all, it was too embarrassing to say such a thing. Although the entire army was already well aware of it, the other troops still did not know. The adjutant smiled and said, I've already asked about this. I heard that Master Bai plans to take away the few who can cause the most trouble. All 5 of them are leaving? Chief Xiao confirmed again. The adjutant nodded. All of them are leaving. When Chief Xiao heard this, he turned his head and cleared his throat. He raised his attitude and said to Bai Juan, which school do you want to go to? A university. After the young man finished speaking, his thin, pale lips curled up. Something different rose in his pitch-black eyes. This person's expression was very indifferent even when he was fighting in the jungle. At this moment, his eyes seemed to reflect the golden light of the setting sun, mixed with an indescribable color. Chapter 1254. Captain Zhao and the adjutant could not help but be stunned when they saw this situation. What's going on with this kid? Captain Zhao asked his subordinate. The adjutant shook his head. The main reason was that he was also dumbfounded. Master Bai had never been like this before. He had a feeling that something was going on. Captain Zhao pondered for a moment and said, University A doesn't belong to us. Besides, our army has never gone to schools to give people military training. I'll give a call to the army branch. You guys are with them, but I don't know if you guys have gone there to train the university students or the army. Even their leaders have to salute you when they see you. You brat, you're really going back to your old age. Of all the things you can do, you have to go and give people military training. With your identity. Forget it, you guys don't have any missions recently. I'm warning you, take those bastards under you with you. Yes. Bai Juan gave a perfunctory military salute with a nonchalant expression. Captain Zhao wanted to stomp his feet again. However, Bai Juan did not even turn his head. He walked towards his dormitory with a smile on his face. Including Bai Juan, there were a total of 6 people living in the dormitory. It was not like the dormitory of a university student, which was very messy. In the military camp, every dormitory was clean and spotless. Especially the quilt, which was a real square. It was like a piece of tofu and it was a military green color. Because it was a marching quilt, the texture was very hard, so no matter what it looked like, it gave people a masculine feeling. The cups and tooth vats were placed very neatly and everyone's black military boots stood upright under the light, just like the white poplar trees standing tall in the north of the desert. It was night now and everyone was there. There were all kinds of sitting postures. Some had one leg up, some were holding guns, and some were sitting on the bed with their 2 long legs crossed. The bed was also divided into upper and lower bunks, but these people went to the upper bunk. Under normal circumstances they would do a pull-up and a sweep of their long legs. They would sit on it with the wind and their movements were very handsome. Hey, where's Master Bai? Where did he go? Didn't we agree to play poker? Where's he? The person who spoke was obviously a rough man from the northwest. After getting on the bed he directly reached out and pulled his shirt. His figure was good and his face was cool. Where else could he have gone? A person who had just finished showering looked up at the mirror and revealed a face that only Li Hailu would have. He must have gone to flirt with the chief again. Now he was different from before. Compared to when he was in school, his facial features had become more chiseled, and there was a sharpness in his eyes. However, there was one thing that hadn't changed, and that was his innate hedonistic nature. Hailu, how many times have I told you? It was the chief who invited me to tea. I didn't flirt with him. Bai Juan's thin lips curled up slightly as he walked in. I'm still very afraid of old Zhao. After all, he is my superior. Everyone was speechless. Judging from how you address him as old Zhao, I really can't tell how afraid you are of him. Alright, let's put aside the matter of playing poker for now. I have good news to tell you guys here. Bai Juan smiled like a spring breeze. His temperament was completely natural. It's about a vacation. Hearing this, everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. Master Bai, do you mean that we can go out on vacation this time? Someone jumped down from the top bunk. The smile on Bai Juan's lips became even wider. You can say that. Fuck, is it going to rain red all day? In such good weather with a gentle autumn breeze, my old man actually didn't trip me up and continued to let the army lock me up. This is not normal. Even if your old man doesn't care, my father is still worried that I will go out and harm the people. The main reason is that he is afraid that I will go to all kinds of nightclubs as soon as I come home. He even suspects that I am gay. You guys said that my father is not his biological son, but he is actually so suspicious. The person I like is clearly a girl, okay? I was just curious and went to a man's place. I am puzzled. Isn't he afraid that there will be more men in the army? You two scumbags, get lost. Who's the scumbag? Have you forgotten the last time your mother came to the military camp to see you? She said that if you go home and race again, she will make sure that you won't be able to leave the military camp for the rest of your life. From the above conversation, it was enough to see how much of a scam this group of people work. No wonder Chief Zhao's head hurt when he mentioned these people. In the past, when Bai Juan didn't come, these people were just messing around on their own. It didn't affect the man surnamed Zhao to be his chief. In any case, he was just helping his superior look after this group of young masters. Moreover, this group of little brats only wanted to climb the wall at most. Ever since Bai Juan came, they had really twisted into a rope. They didn't want to climb the wall anymore. Like a real soldier, they were very good in all aspects. This small army had also become the most swift and decisive existence in the entire military region. They had completed many impossible missions and almost everyone had battle wounds on their bodies. Sometimes it made Chief Zhao quite proud. However, there was one thing. Their ability to harm others really made him gnash his teeth in anger. The main thing was that they had even harmed him. Wait a minute, do we want to go out together? Some people felt that things would not be so good. After all, their father always hoped that someone could control them. Bai Juan did not deny it. The few of them said again, it's not bad to go out together. We can also go to the seaside to barbecue. Bai Juan said very slowly, the place we are going is not the seaside. It's fine if we don't choose the seaside. One of them said, I prefer a more artistic place. Let's go to Jiangnan. Bai Juan walked over and sat down. That's not the south either. The north is fine too. It's just that. It's not bad to go to a modern city or something. I feel like I've become a cave person. This time he seemed to have guessed correctly. Bai Juan curled his lips. It's indeed a big city. The big city in the north. The imperial capital. This was the first reaction of the 5 people. Fuck, this is the rhythm of wanting me to go home. Among the 6 people other than Bai Juan, 4 were from the imperial capital. The rest were from Wangjing and Junyang. They were all places with the most developed military. It's good to go home, but I'm afraid that I'll anger my father again. Someone said very seriously. It was obvious that this kind of thing was done a lot. Li Hailu also agreed with this sentence. My father will definitely chase me all over the courtyard. Bai Juan smiled lightly and shook his finger meaningfully. Don't worry, you won't have time to go home. What do you mean? Li Hailu, who was familiar with Bai Juan, gradually realized that something was wrong. Bai Juan put on the military cap in his hand and said with a faint smile, "Because the place we are going to is a school, not a military compound. We are going to be instructors for the students of University A for 10 days. We only have 12 days of vacation, so of course, we don't have time to go home." Chapter 1255. What? Instantly, the dormitory was filled with wails. Some people almost suspected that there was something wrong with their ears. "Master Bai, are you saying that you want us to give military training to the university students? Use the hard-earned vacation time?" "That's right, your understanding is correct." Bai Juan's voice was indifferent. That person did not feel that he had been praised at all. His handsome face collapsed and he reached out to hug his head. "Oh no. This is not true. Where's the promised barbecue at the seaside swimming pool?" "There's no such thing." "I've decided." Another person said, "Master Bai, it's good to stay in the military camp. At the very least I can walk the dog and tease Chief Xiao." Chief Xiao was speechless. What did he mean by walking the dog and teasing Chief Xiao? "Don't stop me, I'm going to beat these bastards to death." The other three also said very heroically, "We're not going out." When Bai Juan heard this, he opened his eyes and glanced at this group of people. "You know, I've always been very democratic." After hearing the word people, the group of people could not help but tremble. After all, the so-called democracy that Master Bai mentioned was that it was best to listen to whatever he said. These people thought that Bai Juan would use some kind of suppression method on them like before. All the hair on their bodies stood on end as they prepared to fight. Unexpectedly, Bai Juan just straightened the military cap on his head and smiled very handsomely. "You can choose not to go, then I'll give this hard-earned opportunity to the other regiments. After all, there are so many beauties in University A, there will always be people who are willing to go." "Master Bai." The youngest one pounced over and grabbed Bai Juan's trousers. "You heard wrong just now. We mean that we have to go. We absolutely have to go. Whoever doesn't let us go, we will bite them to death." Bai Juan turned around and raised his eyebrows. "You mean we have to go? All of us?" "Of course." The 5 of them nodded together. Their attitudes were very positive. Bai Juan said concisely, "I'll give you 5 minutes to pack up all your things. After 5 minutes, gather downstairs." "Yes." Swoosh. A neat and uniform salute. Apart from being handsome, that kind of action was more rigid and disciplined. This was completely different from their usual image. However, when they turned around, there was an uproar. "Did you hear that? A University A beauty? Nonsense, hurry up and pack your things. Hey, look at what I'm wearing. Isn't my handsomeness very unique?" "Come on, not all camouflage uniforms look the same. It depends on the person. I look more handsome in it." Hearing the bustling sounds inside, Adjutant Li pressed his ear against the wooden door and happened to meet Bai Juan's eyes when he walked out. While the car below is ready." Bai Juan's smile did not change. "Thank you. But Adjutant Li, if you want to help Chief Xiao listen to something next time, you can come in and listen." That won't be necessary." "Haha." Adjutant Li's smile froze. After all, it was disgraceful to be caught eavesdropping on the spot. It was truly too terrifying. He had never thought that Bai Juan would actually use such a method to deal with that problematic army. "What do you mean by University A has the most beautiful girls? So that's what those bastards are after?" Adjutant Li said in a low voice. Bai Juan curled his lips. "They are soldiers and they are also ordinary people. It is normal for them to want to find a girl they love at this age." Adjutant Li was surprised that he would answer like this. He could not help but ask, "What about you?" Bai Juan paused for a moment. His indifferent eyes seemed to overflow with endless gentleness. "Don't you know, Adjutant Li? I've said it a long time ago. I already have someone I like." Only then did Adjutant Li remember that there was once a group of military doctors in the army. Most of them were female soldiers. They were specially assigned by the higher-ups to give psychological counseling to the soldiers. One of them had an outstanding appearance and a good background. She always looked for Bai Juan to chat. It was obvious that she was interested in Bai Juan. But before the girl could say anything, during the singing performance that night, when everyone was teasing, Bai Juan opened his mouth. He still remembered that Bai Juan's expression was very serious at that time, as if this matter had touched his bottom line. His eyes were dark as he said, I have someone I like and I don't like anyone to make such a joke. I also ask some people to keep a distance from me. His words did not leave any face for the young lady at all. His rejection was crisp and straightforward. However, I always thought that that was just an excuse you found at that time, Adjutant Li said. After all, Bai Juan had just joined the army at that time. Not only was he the youngest but he also had such a background. How could he join the army after having someone he liked? Bai Juan lowered his eyes and looked at the military truck outside. His voice was indifferent. She has never been an excuse for me to reject anyone. In other words, there really was such a person? Adjutant Li was dumbfounded. When he wanted to ask something more, Bai Juan, who was dressed in a military uniform, had already walked away. Some people said that when you really liked a girl, you would put her photo in your wallet for 3 or 4 years. Bai Juan had never put a Jew's photo in his wallet. Instead, he put it in the lining of his military uniform, the place closest to his heart. Because he had to protect his motherland and his girl well. It was because of this kind of psychokinesis that he was able to endure many things that ordinary people could not endure and become the person he was now. Bai Juan probably couldn't even count the injuries on his back. However, every single one of those wounds was for the sake of this piece of land. Late at night they said that they would gather in 5 minutes, not even a second would be missing. The 6 people got on the truck in a very cool manner. Li Hailu drove and the other 4 stood upright in the back of the truck. Bai Juan sat in the passenger seat, and beside him was the silver-white Alaskan police dog. The scene was very cool. After the military truck drove away, Leader Zhao really thanked the heavens. He could finally live a few days in peace with canned beef. The next day the autumn wind was refreshing, and the morning light shone all over the school. The fragrant hot air came out from the canteen. Students running in the morning could be seen everywhere on the mottled green field. There were also freshmen carrying water bottles. A Jew was the earliest to wake up among them because she had always maintained the habit of morning exercise. She used all the weights and everything else. After all, only after morning exercise could she enjoy breakfast better. It could be said that the foodie Aju's obsession with eating had never changed. With a steamed bun in her mouth, a Jew walked into the dormitory and listened to her roommate say, "Do you know? It's said that the instructors who will give us military training will arrive at the school at 10 o'clock. They will all come by military truck. The scene will definitely be very handsome. Do you want to go and see it?" Chapter 1256. Of course we have to go and see it. We can't fall behind the other dormitories, right? One of her roommates had a very straightforward personality. She pulled a Jew who was holding a steamed bun in her mouth over and winked at her. The person beside her laughed. "Don't ask a Jew. A Jew definitely won't go and see it. Our little cutie likes to eat, right? Little cutie." That person really liked a Jew. As she spoke, she even rubbed a Jew's beautiful and cute little face. A Jew swallowed the steamed bun in her mouth and said seriously, "No, I want to go and see it too. Only good food and handsome men can't be let down. Everyone. We really didn't expect you to be like this." The power of a single dormitory could be imagined. However, the people in this dormitory did not expect that there would be so many onlookers. Their power was nothing in front of the vast masses of the people. This was enough to show that the instructors invited by University A were indeed different from other schools. From afar one could see military green pickup trucks driving over from afar. The tall officers in the back of the truck were all wearing military caps and camouflage clothes. They really became an eye-catching scenery. However, from where a Jew and the others were standing, they really could not see anything. Even if they stood on their tiptoes, they could only see the back of the black heads in front of them. There was also a series of deafening noises. There were indeed many fangirls who liked soldiers. I wonder which instructor is from our class. Look at that one, the one at the front. His legs are so long and his back is so straight. Could it be that soldiers nowadays are recruited based on appearance? How is that possible? The army that this group of people came from is not ordinary. I heard that they are the best army in our country. Usually you can't even see them even if you want to. Wow, so powerful. Of course, this is one of the benefits of University A. A Jew and the others did not even see anyone in the dormitory. There was a lot of discussion around them and an endless stream of news came one after another. Looking over row after row, the girls cupped their faces. Originally, this scene was quite harmonious, but some boys were sandwiched in it and blushed together. What's wrong with this world? I can't see it at all. Her roommate next to her sighed in disappointment. Even when the military vehicle stopped, they still didn't walk to the front. There was a little white cat on Aju's head. In fact, it was easy for her to get there with her skills, but it was not good to cut in line, so she could only turn around and comfort her sisters in the same dormitory. Don't worry. Anyway, you will see it when we gather in the afternoon. I think you should go back to the dormitory to put on makeup and change your clothes first. If other people waste so much time here, they will definitely not have a good rest at noon, so they will forget to take a shower and put on facial masks and makeup. Hearing this, the three roommates immediately turned their heads. Aju. Aju's round almond-shaped eyes were stunned for a moment. She did not understand why her roommates looked so excited. One of them pulled Aju over. You're really smart. Big sister admires you very much. Don't tell anyone about this. Let's go back to the dorm now. That's right. Let's go back now. The other one chuckled. It's not easy to find a handsome instructor. We have the cutest little junior sister in the school. Quickly dress her up. When the time comes, let Aju act cute and we'll have everything. Aju was speechless. The people from Aju's dormitory had just left. The soldiers on the military trucks all jumped down one by one. They jogged, their heels touching each other heavily. They stood in a standard military posture and saluted. That kind of cool and experienced was indeed something that ordinary men couldn't compare to. The person who welcomed them was a school leader. He happily stretched out his hand. Welcome. We sincerely welcome you to come to our University A for military guidance. The person standing at the front put down his hand from his military cap and smiled. Professor Liang, you're too polite. The chief has told us that you're old classmates. It's only right for us to come. Good. Professor Liang said the word good 3 times in a row and was about to lead the talented instructor inside. Then he heard another sound coming from behind. The sound was even louder than before. There were even girls who could not help but scream. It was not because of anything else, but because another military vehicle had appeared behind the 2 military vehicles. This time it was not enough to describe the people on the military vehicle as capable and experienced. Other than the unique temperament of soldiers, each of them seemed to have their own characteristics. They wore pure black sunglasses, a 1-yard belt and straight military boots. When they walked, they seemed to be able to bring up a gust of wind. Especially the one walking at the front. He had a handsome nose, a perfect side profile, good-looking lips, long legs and a narrow waist. His temperament was cold. His camouflage uniform made him look like a special forces soldier. His pair of dark and deep peach blossom eyes reflected the bright autumn sun. When he swept his gaze across the crowd, there was always a feeling of being electrocuted. Oh my God, is this really not a TV series? I'm going crazy. How can he be so handsome? If he was our instructor, I would be willing to stand in military posture for an entire day. I don't need to sleep today. The one standing behind him is also handsome. I feel like touching him. My God, my nose is going to bleed. Don't you think that they look about the same as us? They seem to be a little younger than the previous batch of instructors. They should be new recruits. I heard that new recruits are very young. They are about the same age as university students. Some are even younger than us. Who cares what kind of soldier he is? We must have this kind of instructor. When Professor Liang saw this scene, he raised his eyebrows in surprise. Captain Li, this is? After all, every year during military training, the military vehicles would arrive together. Everyone knew that the most important thing in the army was discipline. How could there be people who were late? What's more, there were 6 of them. Captain Li also frowned, then he smiled and said, they are from another unit. They were added at the last minute. I see. Professor Liang smiled. Then let the soldiers rest for a while and have lunch. After lunch, let the students gather on the field as usual. Okay. Captain Li was fine with it. However, Vice Captain Zhang, who was standing next to him, glanced at the new person who appeared with a face full of disapproval. Captain, where did this new recruit come from? How can he not know the rules? Captain Li said in a low voice. The regiment commander said that they were far away, so they probably came late. It's not that they are far away but that they haven't been trained by the army. Look at the way they walk. Do they really think that they are from the special forces? How funny. Chapter 1257. Of course, the soldiers who were approaching heard this person's words. However, there was one thing. They had indeed come late, so they were in the wrong. Therefore they did not say anything. Instead they stood behind Bai Jun with strong eyes. With Master Bai around they would not talk nonsense in public. This was the rule. As for Bai Jun, he only glanced at that person casually. Like a pine tree, he extended his hand to Captain Li, Unit 211, here to report. He did not salute. Vice Captain Zhang was not convinced by this matter. He snorted coldly and said arrogantly, "Didn't the captain of your original unit tell you to salute when you see a superior who is higher than you?" Hearing this, the five of them rolled their eyes at him in their hearts. Salute? Superior? Master, by shaking hands with your captain was already giving your captain a lot of face. Even your captain had to salute Master Bai when he saw him. Besides, even if they did not know Master Bai's original identity, the stars on his shoulder were the same as their captain's. This person was either blind or purely looking for trouble. The latter was most likely. It was obvious that this person did not like them. However, Bai Jun only curled his thin lips with a faint smile. Then he turned around and pointed at his shoulder. His voice was very faint with a unique magnetism. "Didn't the captain of your original army tell you that you have to salute when you see a superior who is higher than you?" The man surnamed Zhang had just said the same thing. However, he was choked by Bai Jun's words and could not refute anything. The person in front of him did it on purpose. He deliberately used his original words to stop him. Bai Jun swept a glance over him as cold as ice. "Why aren't you saluting?" Captain Li knew that his vice-captain was too impulsive, so he warned in a low voice, "Salute?" Vice-Captain Zhang gritted his teeth. He had no choice but to reluctantly salute Bai Jun. When Bai Jun's people saw this, they immediately replied to Captain Li in unison. They had always been polite. Bai Jun smiled and said to Captain Li, "Captain Li should have received the news as well. I hope that we can complete the mission in these 10 days. That's what we should do." Captain Li was the kind of man who really did not care about trifles. He reached out and shook Bai Jun's hand. Vice Captain Zhang's anger continued to rise as he watched from the side. It was one thing for a group of recruits to be so unruly, but they also made him lose face in public. Although Professor Liang had already started walking in that direction, there were still many university students around. They were the most outstanding team in the army. How could they be humiliated by these random soldiers who came from nowhere? Sooner or later he would get his revenge. Some people saw that Vice Captain Zhang was unhappy. They came over and said to him, "Vice Captain, this is nothing. Let's wait and see. When the military training starts, there will be a shooting competition. Those recruits definitely don't know anything. When the time comes we will crush them with our strength. Let's see if they will be dumbfounded." When Vice Captain Zhang heard this, his eyes finally lit up. That's right, when the real military training begins, these wild soldiers will have a good time. Everyone was ready to go. They were going to follow Professor Liang into the cafeteria for lunch before facing the students again. Only Bai Jun's eyes were looking at the crowd intentionally or unintentionally along the way. The few soldiers following behind him all felt that their Master Bai was not normal today. If one were to say that he was looking at beauties, no, that was impossible. They had seen Master Bai never look at women when he was on a mission. It should be said that regardless of whether it was a woman or a man in front of him, there was only the difference between a comrade and an enemy. Even if there were some missions that required them to participate in international balls, with many beauties gathered, Master Bai could still pass through thousands of flowers without being stained by a single leaf. He remembered that once someone wanted to use a honey trap on Master Bai to get him to tell them his original army and real name. In the end, that woman was so infatuated with Master Bai that she was able to get everything out of him. Therefore he was definitely not looking at a beauty. Then what was he looking at? It couldn't be that he was looking at a man, right? Stop, don't think about this horrifying idea anymore. Don't you think it's strange? Master Bai personally brought us here to give military training to the university students. This is very strange in itself. Young Master Li, go and ask quick. Li Hailu thought to himself that even if they didn't say anything he had to ask. In front of so many people he had to pay attention to his superiors and subordinates. He couldn't directly shoulder them, so he simply leaned over and said in a low voice, "Hey, what were you looking for just now?" His eyes didn't leave him. "Looking for a Jew." Bai Juan's voice was still very indifferent, and it sounded like there was no change in his mood. However, it was these 3 words that made Li Hailu, who was full of arrogance, freeze on the spot. The rest of the people had never seen Li Hailu like this before. They asked curiously, "What's going on? What's wrong with young Master Li?" Li Hailu had always felt guilty about that incident back then. He always felt that if it wasn't for him, Gu Rou wouldn't have pushed a Jew out so easily, and a Jew would have left the Bai family. Although Bai Juan had always said that this matter had nothing to do with him, Li Hailu still missed a Jew. After all, they had watched her grow up. He would always remember a Jew's appearance when she was young. She had a big bald head. When they played games she would run up and down to get food for them to eat. The time when one was young was always missed the most. Sometimes when Li Hailu thought about it his throat would feel uncomfortable. This was also why he wanted to be smarter and really chose to join the army. In the past when he saw girls he didn't care about anything else. Now he really felt that what a Jew said was right. The women at the foot of the mountain are tigers. Therefore for so many years, Li Hailu had always given people the appearance of a hedonistic young master. Even if women really came he had already learned how to distinguish their purpose of approaching him. However, what Bai Juan said still made his entire body tremble. He couldn't even speak clearly. "The Jew's here?" "Yes." Bai Juan smiled. He was handsome with bright eyes and white teeth, but there was a feeling in his voice that only the 2 of them could understand. "Hailu, you miss her too, right?" Bai Juan had just entered the army and Li Hailu had followed him. For more than 3 years they had not seen a Jew even once. But at the same time, Li Hailu knew better than anyone else. No matter how much he missed her, it was not as heavy as Bai Juan's. He still remembered the first year after he entered the army. The young man who he thought would never cry leaned against the wall in the middle of the night and whispered the word, "a Jew." He thought after so many years, why didn't he see how much Bai Juan liked a Jew? If he didn't love her too much, why would he miss her so much that he cried? Chapter 1258. If that was the case, it explained why Bai Juan came to University A for military training. So a Jew was here. After missing her, there was an indescribable excitement. Li Hailu did not care whether he was outside or not. He grabbed Bai Juan's arm and asked excitedly, "Is a Jew a new student who came to report this year? Which class is she in?" Such an action would naturally attract the attention of Vice Commander Zhang, who had always disliked them. After hearing the noise, Vice Commander Zhang looked behind him. The expression on his face was clearly saying that they were too noisy. Li Hailu did not have the time to care about that group of people. His hand was still holding Bai Juan, insisting on an answer. Bai Juan, on the other hand, curled his thin lips and seemed to be in a good mood. "I don't know yet, but I should be able to see her when we gather later." "Oh right, when we gather all the freshmen will be there." Li Hailu laughed out loud. "I wonder what a Jew looks like now." It had been more than 3 years. The little guy should have grown taller. Back then what he cared about the most was her height. He really wanted to hug her. "Brother, when the time comes I'll find her for you. I'll let them all find her for you." Bai Juan looked at him calmly and said, "You can find her, but you can forget about hugging her." Li Hailu was speechless. "Bai Juan, you're really jealous." Although the 4 people behind him did not know what had happened, they seriously felt that Bai Juan was very different today. The key was, who was he looking for? Weren't they here to give the beautiful university students military training? How did it become looking for someone? The problem army looked at each other in dismay. It was as if they could no longer figure out Bai Juan's routine. On the other side, in the noisy female dormitory, the 3 roommates were working together to dress up their cute little junior sister. "How about drawing eyeliner? A Jew has such beautiful eyes, so there's no need to draw eyeliner. If you draw it you'll look demonic." "Then how about sticking fake eyelashes? Do you still need to stick a Jew's eyelashes? You don't blink. If you blink again I'll pluck out all your long eyelashes." A Jew who was threatened sat down obediently. She held the little white cat in her hand and said very seriously, You guys have been discussing for 15 minutes. Why don't I have a meal first and you guys can discuss it? No. We only have inspiration when we look at your face. Exactly. Her face was pleasing to the eye and smooth to the touch. Got it. What? Doesn't Nine have a pair of tiger ears? Let her wear it. Then he would draw a little heart on the left side of her face. He didn't need to do anything else, mainly because he didn't want to affect her natural beauty. Not all girls were suitable for drawing hearts on their faces, but for someone like a Jew, once it was drawn, it would make her small face look even more youthful. Coupled with a pair of furry cat ears, it was simply perfect. Alright, I'll use this face to confuse the instructors. Old Wu looked at his masterpiece with satisfaction. Another roommate directly handed the big steamed bun in his hand to Cutie Chung. A Jew, you don't have to do anything when the time comes. Just stand there obediently and look at others with your big round eyes. That's acting cute. Oh, a Jew said as she brought the steamed bun over. She ate it with a pair of big eyes and a small face. The three of them could not resist her cute appearance. They all pounced on her and each of them kissed her. A Jew's body was distorted by the kiss, but she did not forget to say, "You have to leave this enthusiasm for handsome men. Even handsome men can't compare to our cute pets. Give me another kiss." Looking at the rice balls and snacks that the three of them bought for a Jew, one could tell how much they liked a Jew. A Jew raised her big eyes and said very seriously, "It's very fun in the ancient tomb." This child thinks she's been to the ancient tomb again. That person shook his head and patted a Jew's head. Might be good. Stop fantasizing. Going to the ancient tomb is after graduation. Now your main task is to act cute and keep the instructor. You have to be the most handsome one, understand? A Jew nodded and said, "This kind of thing depends on fate. When I went out today I divined for our class. Chapter 1259. Ever since they were in the same dormitory as a Jew, the three of them realized that a Jew seemed to be very talented in fortune-telling. At first they did not believe it. After all, they were all materialists. How could they believe the words of some monsters? But a Jew actually calculated what each of them had encountered in the past. This made the three girls instantly kneel down. Not only could the cute pets in their dormitory flirt, but they could also predict good or bad luck for people. Moreover, their accuracy was somewhat bizarre. Therefore, when they heard that a Jew had done a divination before they went out, they immediately became excited. How was it? A divination. At this point, a Jew paused and smiled. It was very beautiful. We will get what we want. The three of them looked at each other. In other words, our instructor will be a handsome guy? Of course. Oh yeah. But a Jew touched her swollen belly again. Our location is indeed not very good. We might encounter some twists and turns. The three of them were speechless. Forget it. Anyway, the location is not good. Even if the instructor is not handsome, we still have you. Hearing this, a Jew was a little stunned. The furry little tiger ears on her head stood up. When did she have the same function as a handsome guy? Because of the appearance of Bai Juan and the others, some of the students who were close to the platform had already secretly taken out their phones and started to take photos. Professor Liang did not directly object to their behavior. Instead, he said humorously, "When the instructors go down later, they will reserve time for everyone to take photos. However, students, you have to think carefully. Whoever takes out their phones will be confiscated by the form teacher. You are not allowed to play with your phones during military training. This is the most basic requirement. As for the other requirements, your instructors will tell you one by one. Now please go down and take a look. Then we will discuss how to allocate the classes." After hearing Professor Liang's words, some of the students wished that they could directly wave at Bai Juan and let him look here and there. Whether it was his face or figure, Bai Juan was perfect to the extreme. Even his good-looking thin lips were shining. It was no wonder that some of the girls were so excited that they grabbed the hand of another student. In the entire field, almost all the students were looking at him. However, in Bai Juan's eyes, it was as if those gazes did not exist. They did not affect him in the slightest. That handsome face was still so handsome and noble that it made people want to scream when they saw it. There was not the slightest ripple. He strode forward with his long legs, dressed in a military uniform. His dark and deep eyes swept over everyone in the class intentionally or unintentionally. Look, what is he looking at? He seems to be looking at us? I don't think so. I saw it just now. It seemed like they were looking for someone. Lu Zitong, who was standing at the front of the team, was the most confident. She wore a red plaid skirt and a white t-shirt. Her long hair was tied into a bun, and her face was covered in natural Korean-style nude makeup. Her lip color was very successful, and her temperament and figure were particularly outstanding. When she saw Bai Jun pass by their class, her lips curled into a smile. But at this moment, Vice Captain Zhang in the team opened his mouth and looked at Bai Jun provocatively. I'm in this class. Don't tell me that Captain Bai doesn't want to give it to me? Bai Jun's tone was very indifferent, so indifferent that he did not have the time to pay attention to this person at all. Right now the only thing in Bai Jun's mind was to find his girl. However, Vice Captain Zhang did not know anything. He thought that Bai Jun did not have the guts to compete with him at all. He stood in front of the acting class one proudly. The students from the performing arts department were all going crazy. They didn't want this instructor at all. That intense gaze made it difficult for Vice Captain Zhang to ignore it. Every one of them, even the most beautiful female student, looked at Bai Jun's back and bit their lips reluctantly. This scene completely ignited Vice Captain Zhang's jealousy. He did not know where this wild soldier came from. Just because he was a little more handsome, he did not know how to restrain himself. How could such a person be compared to them? They were the soldiers that the students should worship. Just wait. Sooner or later he would give this Bai guy a good lesson. It would also let the students know that the person they were looking at now was not a dog shit. There's hope. We have hope. The girls from the archaeology department clenched their hands tightly. The few people from Aju's dormitory immediately placed Aju at the front of the team. They had already decided that if they could really wait until the handsome guy passed through the other 4 major departments and came to their archaeology department, they would offer incense to Aju every day in the future. It had to be said that there was really hope because from afar they could see the handsome guy walking past one class after another. Although he would look carefully, he did not stop in front of any class. Aju, it's almost time. There are only 3 classes left before it's our turn. Aju calmly comforted them. Don't worry. If that person comes over, he will definitely choose us. Why? Aju said seriously, because we are the last class. If he doesn't choose us, who else can he choose? Her roommates were speechless. They really could not refute this reason. When she said these words, Aju did not raise her head. She had been looking at her bulging stomach. From just now she had felt that something was wrong. She seemed to be, probably, on her period. The more she thought about it, the more it came to her. The good things did not work, but the bad things worked surprisingly well. Aju frowned. Could it be that the twists and turns mentioned in the divination were that she had relatives visiting? Why did it have to be at this time? Did it come early? The soreness and discomfort in her lower abdomen had already turned into a faint pain. She felt that there was suddenly a warm current in her lower abdomen that was gurgling without any warning. What should she do? She was wearing white jeans today, so the strength just now must have been a little exposed. If she stood up like this, someone would definitely see her. Why don't she squat down? So many people were looking at the handsome guy, so no one would notice her if she squatted down. Aju, who had been thinking about things with her head lowered, did not know that at that moment, the eyes of the handsome instructor who had been discussed for a long time lit up. It was as if thousands of fireworks were reflected in his eyes. He suddenly walked toward their last class without any warning. Everyone's eyes followed him as he moved. Only Aju, who had a stomachache, reached out and hugged her lower abdomen. With a pair of furry tiger ears, she squatted in the middle of the team. There was cover in front and behind, so her action was not sudden. Instead, it was very cute. However, what Aju did not expect was that as soon as she squatted down, a dark green military jacket covered her head. It did not pass her waist and hung down her thighs, just enough to cover her white jeans. Chapter 1260. Aju froze without warning. The faint smell of tobacco on the military uniform mixed with the fresh ink fragrance of orange blossoms instantly filled her entire nasal cavity. From her point of view, she could only see a pair of pure black military boots. The shoes were shiny and spotless. It was as if they were as noble and unruly as their owner. Everyone around Aju covered their mouths with their hands and could not help but gasp. Aju did not need to raise her head to sense the gazes gathered on her side. What exactly happened? Who threw this military uniform at her? Was it the new instructor? She had already hidden herself so well, but she was still discovered? Aju was about to stand up to confirm the situation when she found that someone had also squatted down like her. That pair of long legs that were originally straight were half bent on the ground. He seemed to be looking at her from the side. Then the other party actually placed his hand on her head. Aju paused and suddenly raised her eyes. That familiar yet unfamiliar face appeared in front of her without any warning. It was so close that it was just a breath away. The sunlight shone down from the top of his head and flowed in his eyes. It was like those childhood memories that had returned, bright and dazzling. He looked at her with a smile. There was a faint arc at the corners of his mouth. His pair of peach blossom eyes were black and white and beautiful, but his gaze was burning bright. Looking at him like this, Aju suddenly remembered that when she was very young, the two of them were lying on the bed together. He was not very old when he was holding her in his arms and telling her a bedtime story. He had read a passage from a novel to her. That passage was written like this: "In this world, there will always be such a person who will appear when you need him the most. Whether you are surrounded by light or standing alone in a corner, he will definitely find you. Then he will pass through the most turbulent crowd and come to hug you." Aju. He called her name. His voice was very low and gentle, as if there was quicksand slowly flowing through his ears. It was very similar to what he often heard when he was young, but compared to that time, it was even more magnetic. He was still smiling, but Aju was in a daze. With a pair of little tiger ears, she could not help but reach out to touch Baijun's face. The touch from her fingertips was very soft. Was he really her little brother? Aju blinked her round cat eyes. There was a pink heart painted on the side of her face. It was so beautiful that it was a little bubbly. Baijun looked at his beautiful child, who was stunned. Without thinking, he bent down and directly carried her up horizontally. He used his military uniform to cleverly cover Aju's face. His action immediately caused an uproar in the field. Everyone was looking in his direction. The girls wished they could transform into the person he was carrying. However, other than the few people in Aju's dormitory, no one knew who he was hugging. Because the green military uniform draped over her body happened to cover Aju's face, only revealing the two small tiger ears on her head. Li Hailu stood far away, but when he saw Baijun's action, his eyes lit up in a minute. However, the others didn't know what was going on. All of them were in a state of crash. What's the situation? What's the matter with the instructor? Voices rose and fell one after another on the sports field, all of which were the voices of the students discussing. The adjutant surnamed Zhang also looked in Baijun's direction, as if he was about to open his mouth to stir up trouble. However, before he could open his mouth, Baijun straightened his two overly slender legs. His pitch-black eyes looked at the podium. His voice was very calm and there was not a trace of fluctuation in it. "Professor Liang, this student is not feeling well. I'll send her to the infirmary first." Professor Liang was obviously a little unable to react. He thought that this person's eyesight was really good. There were so many students, but he could not even see a person's face clearly. The other party could even see that someone was not feeling well. He was really amazing. Baijun did not seem to have thought of hearing Professor Liang's agreement. After saying that, he walked through the square formation formed by the students. His side profile was still incomparably handsome. He just hugged Aju as if there was no one else around. Aura was really a very selective thing. Even if he left just like that, Professor Liang did not say anything. Instead, the entire scene felt shocked. His straight military uniform depicted his tall and straight back. Gradually, until he could no longer be seen, no one on the sports field dared to speak. Aju's roommates were basically in a state of wandering souls. They only wanted that handsome man to be their instructor, but they did not want Aju to use the trick of self-injury. However, Aju's trick of self-injury was really worth it. Not only did she complete the mission perfectly, But she also got such a princess carry. The scene just now could not be more awesome. However, the soldiers did not think so. They could not wait to immediately follow him and see who was in Bai Juan's arms. What a joke. When had Master Bai ever treated a girl like this? Those beautiful military doctors bit their lips and fell in front of him. He would not even help them and directly hand them over to his assistant. Even if there were really students who were not feeling well, Master Bai would have already instructed them. How could he personally touch them? They had always suspected that Master Bai either liked men or was allergic to women. But today he actually knew how to hug someone. They had to see who exactly made Master Bai, this evildoer, fall in love with someone. Seeing through the thoughts of these four people, Li Hailu directly blocked in front of them. Go and choose the class first. Don't choose the one that Bai Juan chose. If you don't take the other classes, they will all be taken by others. Compared to these things, Master Bai is more important. Bah. What I mean is that Master Bai's relationship is more important. Of course, Li Hailu could not let them go over. Right now, Bai Juan probably wanted to be alone with the Jew the most. Otherwise, he would not have thought of such an excuse. This student was not feeling well and needed to go to the infirmary. He clearly felt that the people around him were in the way. I advise you not to go over, Li Hailu said very cautiously. Of course, the soldiers would not be so obedient. Young Master Li, aren't you curious about who has such great charm for our Master Bai to hug? Li Hailu shook his head. I'm not curious because I know who it is. Who is it? The four of them widened their eyes. Li Hailu was very carefree. Do you still remember that Bai Juan said a long time ago that he had someone he liked? That was completely an excuse used by Master Bai to block the peach blossom, okay? Someone obviously did not believe it. Li Hailu was not in a hurry. Since you don't believe this, then you should know that there is a photo in the lining of Bai Juan's military uniform, right? Chapter 1261. Of course I know. Master Bai treasures that thing more than he treasures himself. They could not understand how a photo could be treated as a treasure. Li Hailu announced the answer. The girl he's hugging now is the girl in the photo. Young Master Li, don't talk nonsense. Master Bai's photo is clearly of a young monk. We even risked our lives to look at it for a while. After Master Bai found out, the canteen didn't give us meat for half a month. That's right. Li Hailu silently raised his head. I once thought that she was a young monk, but reality proved that she was a girl. You should know her company. Which company? Jue Group. The four soldiers were shocked. That famous little princess? Li Hailu smiled. Yes, Bai Juan was once her guardian. The two of them lived together for 8 years. At that time, Bai Juan fell in love with her. Even after entering the army, he couldn't help but inquire about her every year. However, he didn't go to see her because he felt that it wasn't time yet. Now that the time has come, are you sure you want to disturb him at this time? You should understand Master Bai's character. The four soldiers were speechless. They really understood. Master Bai was definitely the kind of person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. They had originally planned to barge in no matter what young Master Li said. Now they should obediently stay and choose the military training class. One had to know that compared to curiosity, if they ruin Master Bai's long-awaited reunion, Master Bai would definitely make them eat vegetarian for half a year and cut off all their entertainment activities. Master Bai's relationship with their parents was very good. If they joined forces to suppress them, they would definitely have no way out. Therefore they would not go and look. They would stay. Li Hailu was very satisfied with the result of his words. It was also because Bai Juan was usually shameless enough. The selection on the field was still continuing. Some people were jealous that someone could be treated like that by Bai Juan. They snorted coldly in dissatisfaction. The people from the acting department also said, "He's really better at acting than us. He can feel uncomfortable at any time, but he has to feel uncomfortable at this time. He really thinks that he's Sister Lin. But why is our instructor so ordinary? Although he's not bad-looking, he's far worse than the one just now. Shoo, don't say any more. He'll hear you later." In fact, Adjutant Zhang had already heard it. The more the students discussed, the darker the light in his eyes became. He looked at the back of the figure that disappeared at the end of the field, and once again he made up his mind to teach the other party a lesson. The people on this side were different. On the other side, Aju was being hugged by Jun the entire time. She felt that it was a little unreal. During the 3 years that she had been overseas, she had written many letters to her little brother. Every time he sent it out, there was no reply. He even went to the Bai family to take a look. Even Grandpa Bai had followed the army to the southwest border. There was no one at home. The people in the compound said that the little brother had joined the army, but no one knew which unit he had joined. At that time Aju was still young. She held a large pile of gifts that she had collected from abroad in her arms. She stood at the entrance of the Bai family's house and cried. She finally understood what her little brother had always said in the past. On my birthday I don't want anything. I just want you to be there. But it was too late. There were also people who said that not replying to letters meant that they did not want to contact that person. After all, she had asked her brothers to find out where her little brother was. Bai Jun's habit of bringing chocolate was something that Aju had when she first had her period that year. Sometimes Aju's stomach would hurt and she could not eat anything. She only wanted to eat chocolate. This seemed to be a common problem in the Bailey family. Ever since then, Master Bai, who had never eaten sweets, would always carry a piece of chocolate with him. Other than himself, no one knew who he had prepared it for. It seems to have melted a little. Bai Jun looked at the spot where her little face was stained with the chocolate. His lips curled into a smile and he was indescribably doting. Aju's fingers were still tugging at his sleeve, as if she was afraid that he would suddenly disappear. It's still very delicious even if it melts. Is that so? Bai Jun laughed softly. Then I'll try it too. As he said that, he suddenly leaned over. Chapter 1262. His slightly cold thin lips imprinted on the corner of Aju's mouth without any warning. Aju, who was originally silly and cute, now even her head froze. Seeing her like this, Bai Jun did not stop. Instead he reached out and pressed the back of her head. He opened his mouth and held her lips, kissing her very gently. The sunlight fell on Bai Jun's body through the white cloth that was blown away by the breeze, coating him with a faint halo. The feeling of their lips touching was very soft, and there was a faint but pleasant smell. Aju felt as if she had been fed a piece of mint candy. It was cold. She should have been awake, but for some reason her heart would contract slightly with the other party's movements. Bai Jun did not deepen the kiss. Firstly, the location was not right. Secondly, he was afraid that he would scare away his Aju as soon as they met. That would not be worth the loss. Therefore he only touched it gently. The tip of his tongue licked Aju's lips as if to comfort her. It was like a feather gently sliding past, making one's heart itch. It's really delicious. Bai Jun pulled away from the two of them. His eyes flashed with gentleness, and the corners of his mouth could not help but reveal a smile. It was as if he was really evaluating the chocolate. Aju was in a daze. Her eyes were still looking at Bai Jun's smiling face. He stood up and said, "I'll go make you a cup of brown sugar water. Wait here obediently." Looking at that back, Aju subconsciously licked the place where Bai Jun had kissed her. She did not know how to answer, so she could only vaguely say, yes. When she realized that she should ask the little brother why he was asking her, Bai Jun had already handed the cup filled with brown sugar water to her lips. "I just tried it. It's not hot." Some things had become a habit since she was young. For example, the things that Bai Jun fed Aju would reflexively eat them. As she drank the brown sugar water in Bai Jun's hand with her round tiger eyes, she thought about why she always felt that the matter of kissing was deliberately turned over by the little brother just like that. However, Aju did not dwell on this question for long. After all, when there was only the bottom of the brown sugar water left, she needed to hold Bai Jun's hand with both hands and exert force. Bai Jun had liked to watch Aju do this since she was young. She was like a cat drinking water and her fingertips were still on the cup. However, what he liked the most was that her hand would be placed on the back of his hand, and her body would also lean towards him. His Aju had not changed at all. Bai Jun smiled again. Aju was still drinking the brown sugar water. When she saw him smile, her round eyes turned over. Bai Juan took the cup away and took 2 tissues to wipe the corner of her mouth. Don't drink at the end. Do you want to sleep? Hearing Bai Juan say that he did not need to drink the bottom, Aju felt that the strength she used to hold the little brother's hand so tightly just now was a little wasted. She looked at the cup regretfully and shook her head. I'm not sleeping. If I sleep in the afternoon, I won't be able to sleep at night. Is that so? Bai Juan raised his eyebrows with a faint smile. Then he placed his palm on the bed and lay on his side. He looked at Aju and kept one hand free to touch Aju's head as if he was coaxing a child. He said in a low voice, then rest with me for a while. I'm a little tired. If these words were heard by those problematic soldiers, they would definitely ridicule Bai Juan collectively. A person who had been sleeping since yesterday and only woke up today when he arrived at school had no right to say that he was tired. Moreover, with Lord Bai's physical strength, he could still stand up and shoot remotely and fight in the jungle without sleeping for 3 days and 3 nights. How could a military king be tired so easily? It was clearly an excuse to flirt with a girl. Unfortunately, the person he was flirting with was none other than Aju. Even though it could be seen that Bai Juan was not sleepy at all, Aju still nodded when she heard him say that he was tired. She was even worried that Bai Juan would get cold, so she gave him half of the blanket. Thank you. Bai Juan smiled. He looked very handsome when he looked at people from the side, especially when he was lying beside him with such long legs. Aju stared at him for a while. Then she stretched out her finger and poked Bai Juan's face. In a soft voice she said, "Little brother." Hearing this name, Bai Juan finally felt that his Aju had really returned. He stretched out his hand and pulled her over. His chin rubbed against Aju's furry head and the corners of his eyes smiled. It feels different. Aju poked his chest again. Bai Juan couldn't help but laugh. How is it different? It's much taller. Aju was a little depressed when she said this. She had already worked very hard to grow, but she didn't expect that little brother was even more hardworking than her in this aspect. Bai Juan tilted his head and kissed the tip of her hair again. I ate a lot during training in the army, so I grew fast. Yes. Aju responded and wanted to poke him again. Bai Juan's eyes darkened. He suddenly grabbed her wrist and brought her hand to a safe position. Aju looked at him in confusion. Bai Juan could only sigh in his heart, but he still smiled. Does your stomach still hurt? Aju shook her head. But even so, Bai Juan's palms still covered her small stomach. In the past, Aju felt that little brother's hand was different from hers. It was dry and warm. He clearly had a cold appearance. Where have you been these past few years? Although he had always vaguely known, Bai Juan still wanted to hear his girl tell him personally. When he saw Aju again, he did not know how to describe his feelings. Just as Li Hailu had said, Aju had indeed grown up. Not to mention her appearance, even her height was completely different from before. No one knew how he felt when he saw that young girl with a pair of tiger ears in the middle of the vast crowd. Including now, looking at this person at such a close distance. He would faintly feel a little unwilling. In a place that he could not see, his girl had a new change. And in these 3 years he was not involved. Even though he understood that there were some things that he could not do anything about, Bai Juan still brooded about what she had done when he was not around. Sometimes, Aju would be a little talkative in front of Bai Juan. Like a little hamster, she would tell him where she had been and what she had done. Bai Juan listened with a smile. He reached out and tucked her long hair behind his ear. His eyes fell on the pink heart that he had discovered long ago. What is this? My roommate made it for me. She asked me to act cute and make the handsome instructor stay. Aju puffed up her cheeks and reached out to poke her left face. She wanted to rub away the heart that she had drawn earlier. However, Bai Juan stopped her. It's very cute. It's indeed suitable for acting cute. However, did this also mean that if he did not come to military training for University A this time, would Aju act cute to others? Chapter 1263. Her instructor would also become someone from the army who came for military training. When he thought of this possibility, no matter how beautiful Bai Juan's smile was, his eyes were cold. He who did not take the army who provoked them seriously had the urge to torture them at this moment. Aju blinked her eyes in confusion. Why did she feel that her little brother seemed to be a little angry all of a sudden? Baizhuan was indeed angry, but his mood did not change that much. Moreover, he really liked that Aju had such a thing drawn on her face. It looked like a gift that had been sent to him, making his originally exquisite little face a little brighter. Perhaps he should change his words. When such a bonus peach heart was stuck to his face, it always made people want to kiss it. Baizhuan did not deliberately endure it. He approached her bit by bit and naturally placed his lips on the peach heart on her left face. This kiss was not like the last one. He kissed her with his eyes closed. Aju could even feel her little brother's thick eyelashes sweeping across her face with his movements. It was soft, numb and itchy. When his lips landed on the heart of the peach blossom, it was as if she had been electrocuted. Aju only felt her heart tremble. It was a very strange feeling. She was a little out of breath. She could only open her round black eyes in confusion. Baizhuan lowered his head to look at her and smiled gently. Aju. Wipe the peach heart off when you go out later. Wipe it off. Aju touched the place where she had been kissed just now. Didn't you say that it was very cute? Yes, it was cute. Baizhuan curled his lower lip. He did not say the rest of his words. It was so cute. Of course he could not let others see it. Aju did not move. In the end, Baizhuan personally reached out his hand and used his fingertips to wipe the peach heart on her face bit by bit. Aju was obedient, but she was getting more and more confused about why her little brother did these things. Baizhuan raised his hand and looked at the time. He really wanted to lie down like this with Aju forever. However, this was not a good place after all. After a long time, the school doctor would also come in. Moreover, the students would be dismissed in a while. At that time, there would probably be a lot of people in the infirmary. Does it still hurt? Baizhuan asked Aju in a low voice. If it doesn't hurt, we'll go back. Aju was no longer in pain. After hearing Baizhuan's words, she rolled over and stood up. Her speed was so fast that Baizhuan regretted asking that question. He should have waited a little longer before going out. Aju did not notice her little brother's regret. After tidying herself up, she stood by the bed and watched Baizhuan lower his head to tidy up the collar and cuffs that had just been crumpled. Baizhuan felt that it was not bad to be waited for like this. When he saw Aju standing there, he naturally stretched out his hand. Without thinking, Aju pulled him up from the bed with all her might. In the past, when they were in school, Baizhuan was always woken up by Aju like this. Xiao Lin and the others would always laugh at him when they saw it. However, in the 3 years that he had been away, he had been gone for a long time. But no one stood by his bed and waited for him. Not to mention pulling him out of the darkness like this. Baizhuan smiled lightly and swallowed the thing that surged out of his throat. Emotions were emotions, but rationality still had to be preserved. Therefore, before Baizhuan left, he did not forget to remind Aju. Aju, remember, there is no good person in the army, so don't get too close to them, understand? Aju heard this and thought for a moment before saying, "Little brother, you are also a soldier yourself." Baizhuan was speechless. He did not expect that there would be a day when Master Bai would set him up. As if sensing their gazes, Aju raised her head and looked in their direction with a pair of majestic tiger eyes. The problem soldiers' backs trembled. Why did they feel that that was not the gaze of a cute girl at all? Why was there a hint of wanting to duel with someone in there? They must have seen wrongly. Chapter 1264. Baizhuan also looked in their direction. With just a casual glance, the problem soldiers immediately retracted their gazes obediently and began to correct the students' proper steps with a serious expression. It was completely impossible to tell that they were peeping just now. Destroying evidence was so fast. On the other hand, Vice Commander Zhang, who was closer to Baizhuan and the others, was immediately stunned when he saw Aju's appearance. Then he sneered again. No wonder this Baizhuan did not choose any other department but chose the most unpopular archaeology department. So this was what was going on. With this thought in mind, his tone became a little strange. We have been training for more than an hour before Captain Bai came back. The students are all good students. Captain Bai, don't delay the progress of the class. When the time comes, we won't be able to score. Bai Juan raised his eyelids and did not say anything. The corners of his mouth curled up, but there was not the slightest bit of warmth. It was this attitude that made Vice Commander Zhang even angrier. It was as if he did not exist in the other party's eyes at all. He was just a wild soldier. What was there to be arrogant about? The students of the archaeology department also heard Vice Commander Zhang's words. They thought to themselves that the more this instructor looked down on them, the more outstanding they would be. With such a handsome and caring instructor in their class, what was the point of military training? Aju also sensed that person's hostility towards Bai Juan. Her round tiger eyes darkened. There was obviously something wrong with the way this person looked at her little brother. She wondered if she would be expelled from the school if she hit an instructor in school. Seeing that she did not move, Bai Juan knew what she was thinking. He suddenly smiled. Aju. Here. Aju still understood the rules of the military in front of her classmates. After all, with her mother's relationship, she knew a lot of common sense in the military. Bai Juan smiled again and said, "Return to the team." Yes. Aju trotted back to the class team. As soon as she stood still, her roommates began to praise her. Aju, your trick of self-injury was worth it. Aju was confused. What trick of self-injury? Her roommates did not say anything. They had an expression that said, "Don't hide it anymore. We all understand. Tonight we will treat you to a big meal to reward you." Aju still had no resistance to a big meal. She nodded her head cutely. However, some of the more insightful roommates noticed something. Aju, why are your lips red? Such a question made Aju immediately recall the scene when Bai Juan lowered his eyes and kissed her. His heart seemed to have skipped a beat. It was clearly a very normal greeting in the past. Could it be that she felt different because she had grown up? It was sweet and bitter at the same time, as if something was pounding on his chest. It was not easy for her to stabilize a little. Then someone asked, "Aju, why is the heart on your face gone?" Aju paused. Her face felt as if it was on fire. "Did you rub it off somewhere?" That person sighed regretfully at first, then laughed. "Forget it, we've achieved our goal anyway. Quick, tell us, how does it feel to be hugged by a handsome guy?" "You don't know, but when the instructor bent down to hug you just now, the entire field exploded. The people from the performing arts department were like fools looking at us. They probably thought that the instructor would definitely choose them this time, but they didn't expect that they would still stay in our archaeology department in the end. Aju, you are a great contributor to our department. You have helped our department hold our heads high." There was a reason why the students said that. In University A, the Performing Arts Department had always looked down on the girls from the other departments, especially the Archaeology Department. In their eyes, none of the girls from the Archaeology Department were presentable. However, for some reason this year there was a student who skipped a grade, Bailey Jiu. As a new student, Lu Zitong, who had always been praised by others, did not like to be robbed of her limelight like this. The Performing Arts Department had always been different from the other departments. Only when one was famous enough in the school could they become the focus of the media. Lu Zitong's family background was not bad, and her piano playing was also very good. She had already been signed by a management company before she entered the school, so she was also very popular in the school. Originally, she should have been the one to shine, but now that her popularity was overshadowed by others, of course she would feel uncomfortable in her heart. Moreover, that instructor. Lu Zitong glanced in Bai Juan's direction and bit her lip heavily. She was clearly the one who had taken a fancy to him first. On the first day of military training, the two departments already had a faint feeling of enmity. Under normal circumstances, the training would not be too strict at the beginning. Usually, they would first plan their walking and standing postures and let the students familiarize themselves with the slogans. Therefore, for the entire afternoon, the entire field was filled with people shouting, "Turn left, march in unison, 121,121. Compared to the other instructors, Bai Juan's voice was not loud. On the contrary, it always gave people a cold and indifferent feeling. However, it was this kind of attitude that seemed to be more convincing to the crowd. There were two girls in the archaeology department who had uncoordinated limbs and were always in the same place. Bai Juan did not let them stand out alone to practice like the other instructors. It had to be said that the fact that Aju had once been ostracized had a great impact on Bai Juan. Therefore, after Bai Juan became an adult, he understood how easy it was for girls at this age to be hurt in their hearts. He still let them stay in the team and walked to the side of the two people. He straightened his slender legs and walked with them. With such a standard, the students walked even more orderly. Especially the two female students who had been led back and forth by Baijun 8 or 9 times, were no longer easy to follow. One of them was Aju's roommate. When she sat on the grass to rest, she said very seriously, "I feel that our instructor is different from other men. In short, he is too handsome. Not only his face but his heart is also handsome." Aju also saw what had happened just now. She nodded her furry head in agreement. Little brother had always been so handsome since he was young. Look, even little Aju, whose boyfriend's strength is off the charts, has nodded. You have to know that previously when Aju looked at those boys who tried to woo her, they were all... The roommate was still looking for adjectives. Another person silently finished for her. God's contempt. Yes. The roommate was very excited. Aju directly broke their fantasy. That's because their strength is not as good as mine. The instructor's strength is greater than yours. The roommate bumped into her. Aju was stunned. Her round tiger eyes were cute and adorable. I haven't competed before, so I don't know. She didn't fight with little brother, so there was never a winner or loser. The roommates laughed together and reached out to rub Aju's head. They liked it very much. This child is taking the joke seriously again. He reached out and touched Aju's head. Then he asked in a low voice, "How's your stomach? Do you want to buy some hot milk to drink first?" Hearing this, the few roommates who were single felt that their eyes were about to be blinded. Such a natural JQ was definitely not something that could be done in a day or two. "Did you tell us the truth? When did you get to know our instructor?" He even started to show off his love without a care. Baijun really did not care what others would think of him, and he did not care about the impact. Those who were familiar with him knew that what he was doing now was to let everyone in the school know that Aju was his. The people from the problem core watched from the side and shook their heads repeatedly. Shameless, too shameless. In front of the entire school, the matter of inviting her to a meal was simply mastered by bluntly telling others that he had a close relationship with the little monk. Otherwise, with Master Bai's watertight style of doing things, he would definitely not mention the matter of a meal in front of so many people. He would definitely find a time to meet someone in private. Moreover, when did they have a meal together? There was clearly no such item. It was simply added at the last minute. Using in a blatant manner. When the problem core walked over, they looked at Baijun with a pitiful and resentful gaze. Facing such gazes, Baijun only said one sentence in an indifferent voice. "Do you want to eat?" Of course. Eating with a girl was better than looking at Master Bai's face every day. He was so handsome that it seriously affected their self-esteem, causing them to lose their appetite. Go. How could they not cherish such a good opportunity to get to know Auntie Bai? At the dining table they had to ask properly. What stage were the two of them at? Li Heila's class was far from here. He was the last to come. He was also a person who did not care what others thought. He came up and messed up Aju's hair. Originally he had already made the gesture of carrying Aju up. Baijun turned sideways and slapped his hand away. "Hailu, this is a school. Be careful of your influence." Li Hailu was speechless. Who was the person who carried Aju up just now? Now he was telling him to be careful of his influence. As expected, men who were jealous were all unreasonable. Li Hailu spoke to Aju through Baijun. "Aju, just tell me. Do you miss me?" Aju nodded heavily. Yes. One word actually made Li Heila's eyes a little bitter. It turned out that she had never blamed him. In fact, Li Hailu also knew that a child like his Aju rarely blamed others. She had been like this since she was young. However, hearing it with his own ears was still different. How much did he regret being young and ignorant back then? He could not see through people, causing 3 years of separation. Now that he had grown up, he would not make the mistakes of his childhood again. At this moment, Li Hailu finally understood what Master Bai meant when he always said that the time was not right. Aju stretched out her claws, wanting to hug Li Hailu as well. Baijun, who was originally standing between the two of them, saw this and moved to the side without leaving a trace. Li Hailu smiled lightly and bent down. He hugged Aju for a while and quickly let go. After all, Master Bai's tolerance had always been directed at Aju. Chapter 1266. The students on the field had not finished walking yet. Even Vice Captain Zhang and the others narrowed their eyes when they saw this scene. The people from the Performing Arts Department were whispering to each other. Did you see that? Those instructors seemed to know the people from the Archaeology Department. I was wondering why the instructor didn't choose any class but chose their class. So that's what happened. His family helped him take care of them. Even so, the instructor is too good to that Bailijio. Zidong, what do you think? Lu Zitong glanced over there. Her expression was obviously very ugly and her voice was a little cold. It's nothing to rely on his family's connections. That's right. The person next to her echoed Lu Zitong's words. If it's a competition of connections, who can compete with our department? Zitong, ask your father to call the principal and ask the instructor to take care of our class more. It would be best if they could change the instructor for them. Lu Zitong also had this thought, but she didn't say it out loud. She just sank into deep thought and glanced in the direction of Bai Juan and Aju. The people on Vice Captain Zhang's side walked over and complained in a low voice. Vice Captain, when are we going to teach those wild soldiers a lesson? I really can't stand what they've done. It's obvious that they're tarnishing our reputation as soldiers. The instructor is not allowed to get too close to the students. This is the rule. However, when I went to ask the captain just now, the captain said that it's not a violation of the rules to eat together in the school cafeteria. Those people don't look like good people at first glance. They're so sloppy after class. I don't know which unit took them in. Don't worry. Vice Captain Zhang sneered. Sooner or later we'll let them know what they're made of. As dusk fell, most of the students on the field had left. However, the cafeteria became exceptionally lively. The aroma of food and rice continued to float out from inside. Aju and the others wanted stir-fried food. They sat on the third floor. Other than the boiled fish, which was meat, the rest of the dishes were vegetarian. When the dishes were served, Bai Juan deliberately asked someone to place the boiled fish farthest away from Aju. He naturally took Aju's bowl, picked up some vegetables for her and poured some juice on the rice. After mixing it back and forth with a small spoon, he handed the bowl back to Aju. Aju did not say anything. She lowered her head and took a big bite. She ate very well and her small face was bulging. Both of their movements were very smooth, as if this was how they usually ate. The people who saw it were a little dumbfounded. This was especially true for the problematic armies. They really couldn't believe that the gentle and patient person in front of them was their Master Bai. That Major Bai, the jade-faced king of hell who made them wish they were dead? When had he ever picked up food for a woman? And he was still mixing the rice. Eat slowly. Bai Juan did not eat it himself. He turned his face to the side and looked at Aju beside him. He supported his chin with one hand and curled his lips into a smile. Then he used another hand to wipe her mouth. Even his eyes were filled with obvious affection. The problem legions were speechless. They simply couldn't eat this meal. Unlike them, Aju's three roommates' eyes were full of vigor and gossip the entire time. How did Instructor Bai and Aju meet? Is it a family relationship? Someone could not help but ask. Hearing this, Bai Juan smiled and placed his hand on the back of Aju's chair. He just watched her eat. No, we've known each other since we were young. I raised Aju. Her roommates were speechless. What kind of answer was this? Instructor Bai's words were very difficult to understand and he never explained much. Her roommates also felt it. This person's eyes would only soften when he looked at Aju. When he looked at others, his eyes were cold. For some reason, although Instructor Bai was very polite to them from the beginning to the end, and even had a smile on his face, these three roommates were inexplicably a little shocked by Instructor Bai's aura. They did not dare to ask anything more. They could only turn their heads to look at Aju, who was still chewing on the rice grains. Aju raised her head. Her beautiful tiger eyes flashed like a clear lake. I was indeed raised by little brother. Little brother started to adopt me when he was 9 years old. Adoption. Her roommates were shocked again. Adopting someone else at the age of 9? After hearing this answer, the roommates felt that Bai Juan really could not be looked at with ordinary eyes. Then you two can be considered childhood sweethearts? Bai Juan raised his eyebrows. Probably because he heard the words he liked, his thin lips curled up very beautifully. Yes. Her roommates were all silent when they saw this. What kind of adoption was this? It was clearly raising her. After she grew up, she would be eaten. Originally, as older sisters, they should have reminded Aju. After all, Aju was obviously very weak in front of Instructor Bai. However, looking at Instructor Bai's appearance, they really did not dare to say anything. The soldiers patted their own heads regretfully. Why didn't I think of adopting a child when I was young? When she grows up, she can be a wife. Master Bai's trick is too deep. Li Hailu glanced at them. Don't talk about when you were young. Now that you look at a child, don't you have a headache? Headache. The soldiers were very self-aware. We can't raise children, but the books say that brothers with younger sisters are usually very gentle. Why don't I feel Master Bai's gentleness? Li Hailu agreed and joined the collective crusade. Bai Juan slowly picked up a piece of vegetable for Aju. Then he wiped his hands and said to them, because you are not my younger sisters, I don't need to be gentle to you. Also, in the future, read less books that affect intelligence. Was he mocking their low IQ? Even if Master Bai mocked someone, he had to attack from the side. It made those people unable to open their mouths. They were very sullen. In the end, the soldiers directly focused their gazes on Aju. Sister-in-law, don't you think that there's something wrong with Master Bai's words? To be honest, sister-in-law, you should control Master Bai. If he's always like this, it's very easy for him to lose friends. Aju was instantly stunned when she heard these words. It was not because of these words but because of that name. Sister-in-law? When the roommates heard these two words, they were no longer calm. The one who had just eaten the chicken almost choked. This was really shocking. How did they think of using the name sister-in-law? Were all people from the army like this? A few people could be considered to have good eyesight. When they saw the situation, they were surprised. Isn't it? Bai Juan swept his gaze over them and said in a cold voice, "Eat your food." All of Bai Juan's emotional fluctuations were used on Aju, whether it was good or bad. The problem core still did not dare to provoke Bai Juan. After hearing Li Hailu's words, they silently withdrew their hands. Aju was still seriously asking for a fight. It's not convenient in the canteen today. We'll fight after the military training is over. A girl had already asked them to fight like this, so of course they had to agree. Okay. Bai Juan actually did not stop them. Instead, he smiled meaningfully. When they really fought in the future, the problem core finally knew what Bai Juan was smiling about at that time. The four of them could not even defeat a little girl. They were even dizzy from the fall. They had lost all their face. As expected, one could not judge a book by its cover. In the future, they would not dare to casually fight with girls anymore. What kind of girl was gentle and lovely? Fairy tales were all lies. Of course, that was what happened after the military training. Therefore, those people were still planning how to show mercy to Aju and force Bai Juan to come out of the mountain. Just like that, the meal was eaten with great relish. After eating, the roommates still wanted to continue gossiping with Aju. Unexpectedly, Bai Juan stood up in advance. He was still holding Aju's hand. His voice was very gentle. I still have to take Aju to a place. She can only go back later. I'll have to trouble you guys in the dormitory. It's not hard, it's not hard. The lethality of Bai Juan's handsome man trick could be seen from the reactions of those girls. The roommates put their palms together and watched the two of them leave. They thought to themselves, Aju, it's not that we don't want to deal with you. It's just that your little brother is too handsome and has too much aura. Go ahead. Even if you get eaten, it's worth it. Aju was held by Bai Juan's hand the whole way. Around 6 o'clock, the students were all in the cafeteria or dormitory. There were very few people walking on the boulevard at this time. Fortunately, this was the case. Otherwise, there would definitely be many people watching. Aju was not afraid of being looked at by others. Although university was much more free than high school, she still did not want Bai Juan to be affected in any bad way. After passing through the school boulevard, they were outside the school. Little brother, where are we going? My house. It turned out that before they came back, Bai Juan had bought a duplex building next to University 8. Needless to say, everyone knew why. The house was very clean and new. The glass cups hanging upside down were transparent and shiny. It could be seen that even its owner had not been here many times. The Bai family had a lot of properties. However, this house was different. It did not belong to the Bai family. It only belonged to Bai Juan. This was what Bai Juan had envisioned for the future in the past. When he was young, he had thought of buying a house that belonged to him. There was only him and his Aju in it. Whatever Aju wanted, he would buy for her. As for how young he was when he was young, it was probably when he was around 10 years old. Therefore, Master Bai was really very possessive since he was young. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.